Good morning, everyone. Excited to be together for our CPAG meeting today. Seeing that most CPAG members are now present, Sarah, will you please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Certainly. Melanie Green.
Here.
Ed Monensala.
Here.
Jesse Levin.
Here.
Nancy Portillo.
Here.
Ron Anaya.
Here.
E.T. Battle Holt.
Here.
Diane Grotjohn.
Here.
Serena Small.
Present.
Janelle Woodward.
Here.
Mia Cooper.
Here.
Roddy Boonchoy.
Here. Good morning.
Sheilanine Cruz Gonzalez.
Here.
Babatunde Ilori.
Here.
Gabriela Tavitian.
Here.
Amy Nguyen Hernandez.
Here.
Todd Collins.
Here.
Melanie, we have a quorum.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. I have a few general announcements. The 2023 CPAG dates have been selected, so mark your calendars for February 17th, August 25th, and October 20th. Also, an announcement about recruitment. The State Board of Education has begun recruitment for its advisory commissions for the 2023 year. Applications are due at 5 p.m. on Friday, September 23rd, 2022. There's an application link under the commissions and committees page of the State Board of Education website. Our group, CPAG, is recruiting for the following roles: superintendent or other administrator from a county office of education, education researcher, and a representative of private school children. I'm excited to have an introduction today of Dr. Cynthia Glover Woods, Vice President of the State Board of Education. She is the new...
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you. Can you please go back and call the meeting to order and note the time?
Oh, thank you, Sarah. I hereby call the August 2022 meeting of the California Practitioners Advisory Group to order at 9:06. And I'd like to start with saluting the flag. Can I blame it on being 38 weeks pregnant, just to let the group know?
We'll take it.
Okay. All right, there should be a flag coming up on the screen in a second.
Go ahead with the pledge.
All right, ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Thank you. So just to highlight, we have a few announcements. The CPAG dates have been announced: February 17th, August 25th, October 20th. We're doing recruitment for advisory the State Board of Education is doing recruitment for its advisory commissions. Applications are due at 5 p.m. on Friday, September 23rd. CPAG is recruiting for the following roles: superintendent or other administrator from a county office of education, education researcher, and a representative of private school children. Now, on to my very exciting introduction, because I personally think Dr. Cynthia Glover Woods is amazing. I'd like to introduce her. She is our Vice President of the State Board of Education and is the new SBE liaison to the California Practitioner Advisory Group. She replaces Dr. Eileen Strauss, who has been a great resource to us and very supportive of all the work of the State Board and CPAG. So we will miss Dr. Eileen Strauss, but also very excited to welcome Dr. Cynthia Glover Woods. Dr. Glover Woods, would you like to say a few words?
I would be happy to. Good morning, everyone. Just so excited to be a part of this phenomenal group. I have to say it's wonderful to see so many faces that I've had opportunity to work with in the past. So good to see you, even if we're seeing one another virtually. And also to the newest members of CPAG, who I had opportunity to see last year during the application process. Welcome to you as well. And again, just want to let you know how excited I am to be a part and to step into the shoes of my colleague, Dr. Eileen Strauss. I want to share with you, I'll have opportunity to chat with you a little bit later in the agenda, but I did want to share the lens that I bring to our conversations and just my presence in the meeting. I am very, very passionate about the topics that are discussed in this particular group. Accountability has always been something that I felt is key and very important in guiding decisions. And so as I listen, I want you to know I'm coming with the lens from many different offices, if you will, from the county office lens as a former chief academic officer in Riverside County, as well as the past chair of the Curriculum Instruction Steering Committee of CSESA. I also bring to it a lens from a district level as an assistant superintendent, principal, and classroom teacher, and many other positions all intertwined in there. But most importantly, as a person who is extremely passionate and committed, as I know all of you are, to ensuring that our students, all the students in the state of California, are going into school systems that are equitable and that will provide them the best chances for success, not just as students in our system, but as adults in our society. So again, let me tell you how honored I am to be with you this morning and looking forward to the conversations from this phenomenal group. Thank you so much, Chair Green, and good to see you. And 38 weeks does count, I tell you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glover Woods. It's great to see you, and we're excited to have you a part of our group. We have one more introduction today. I'm excited to announce William McGee. He's the new director of the Student Achievement and Support Division at CDE, which has the responsibility for supporting the California Practitioners Advisory Group. He replaces Lindsay Tornate. William, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. I would be honored to. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, community. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is William McGee, and I am the proud, excited new director of the Student Achievement and Support Division. Really looking forward to diving into the work, learning what you all are doing, and seeing how I can support along with my team. One of the things that I'm very excited about is the opportunity to discuss accountability and then how we use that data to really drive equitable conversations to really support all students in reaching outcomes. I also am very excited to just really be here to keep building the relationships and then learning how our work intersects so we can really work in collaborative ways across the Department of Education. So again, good morning, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I will be here with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. We're happy to have you. A few more logistics. We will pause for a break about halfway through item 1. And we will take up item 2 out of order so we can approve the minutes from the February meeting. Public input. Members of the public wishing to call in for public comment should view the live stream of the meeting to know at what time public comment will occur for each item. Public comment can be provided during the meeting by dialing the phone number and access code, which will be listed on the screen during each item. The operator will notify callers when it's their turn to provide public comment. Public comment will be limited to 1 minute. And please remember to turn down the speaker volume of your computers if you're following along with the live webcast to avoid an echoing effect. Item number 3 is general public comment, during which members of the public may provide comment on matters that are not specifically related to the CPAG agenda. 3 quick reminders for CPAG members. Remember to mute your microphone when you're not speaking and to keep your cameras on to ensure that we maintain a quorum throughout today's virtual meeting. Please use the raise hand feature using the Zoom participant window if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. And as a reminder, the chat function should not be used by CPAG members unless you're in the need of technical assistance with Zoom. It's a violation of Bagley-Keene to use the chat function to discuss the meeting. Before we jump to the agenda, we got to hear a little bit from Dr. Glover Woods. Dr. Glover Woods, is there anything else that you would like to add to help frame today's work?
Yes, I definitely would. Thank you again, Chair Green. Just a few things to say. I don't know that it would be groundbreaking news, but just to kind of frame the conversations that you will be going into today. As many of you already know, the impact that came from the COVID-19 pandemic was quite great on our students, their families, as well as our entire K-12, I should say TK through 12 public school system. And one of those great impacts was the fact that we did have to, in a sense, pause some components of our accountability system. And again, to be clear, it doesn't mean that accountability did not still take place and that at the local level, schools and districts and county offices were not looking at data and making data-based decisions. That still was going on. but some of the more formal components, especially the dashboard, did have to be paused as a result of our response to the pandemic. So as a result, we did not have a dashboard in 2020 and 2021 that looked similar to what we were accustomed to prior to those years. So as we get ready to go, well, we've already started, truth be told, into the 2022-23 school year, it's quite exciting that we are able to restart our dashboard with the 2022 dashboard. And those are some conversations you will be engaged in today. Just a couple of points that I'd like to make as I get ready to close. It's just, first of all, remembering how important it is and that the information and data on this dashboard release is going to be used to guide our schools, county offices, school districts with the most recent data. It's going to illuminate areas where there is improvement needed. And we may have all kind of whys as to why the data may reflect what it does when the dashboard comes out, but the data is the data. So this will give us an opportunity to know across all of our school systems what student outcomes and the other data in those areas on the dashboard look like. It will help us target resources to those areas that are most needed. And it will also illuminate bright spots in our system that we may be able to learn some lessons from. So most importantly today, your discussion and feedback on the topics on your agenda are going to be critical as we move forward as a State Board of Education to discuss some of these same topics at our upcoming State Board of Education meetings. So I thank you for your time and sacrifice today, your thought power that will be coming through in your discussions. And most importantly, I thank you just for the dedication you show to all of the students here in California by ensuring that our accountability system is something that is robust and that provides every chance needed for our students to succeed. Thank you again for listening. I believe this will be the last time you hear from me during the meeting, which you'll probably be very welcome. And Chair Green, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clover Woods, for that framing. We have a big item today to dive into, and that sets us on the right path. So thank you so much. Before we get into our meaty item, we'll take up item 2 to approve the minutes from the February 2022 CPAG meeting. CPAG members, you were provided the link to the draft minutes that are posted on the CPAG website. I'll give you about a minute or two to review if you haven't been able to review them already. In about 30 seconds, we'll open the phone line for the public comment queue. Members of the public wishing to provide comment on this item may do so by calling the number that will be on the slide. You'll be notified when it's your turn to speak. We encourage you to please state your name and affiliation for the record. Please remember to turn down the speaker volume of your computers if you're following with the live feed. And speakers will be limited to 1 minute each. Again, if you'd like to make public comment, the phone number is on the slide with the access code.
Caller with phone number ending in 5152. You have been unmuted and your time starts now.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Daron Marcus. I'm a CTE and STEM coordinator at San Mateo County Office of Education and on the CASE Board of Directors. We're all aware of recent research that has revealed that science and engineering education is not being appropriately prioritized by all California school districts. It's unfortunate revelation.
I'm sorry, this is item 2 for approval of the minutes from February of 2022. Please call back for item 1.
My apologies.
All right, next we have a caller with the phone number ending in 6075. You have been unmuted and your time starts now.
I also have a comment for item 1.
Okay, thank you. Caller with phone number ending in 5057, you have been unmuted and your time starts now.
Good morning, members of the State Board of Education and other colleagues on the call this morning. My name is Eric Alvarez, a policy associate with California, along with other recommendations that we'll outline this morning. I would like to highlight the recommendations.
I'm sorry. This is public comment for item 2, which is approval of the February 2022 minutes. If you are calling to provide public comment on item 1, please call back when we are taking public comment. Melanie, that concludes public comment for this item.
Serena, I see your hand. Did you have a question?
I just wanted to move to approve the minutes, please. Motion to approve.
Perfect. Thank you, Serena. Do I have a second motion? Or I'm sorry, do I have a second?
Second.
Nope.
Thank you so much. All right, Sarah, we're ready to hold a roll call vote.
Melanie Green.
Yes.
Ed Montasala.
Aye.
Jesse Levin.
Aye.
Nancy Portillo.
Aye.
Ron Anaya.
Aye.
Bitsy Battle Holt.
Yes.
Diane Grosjean.
Yes.
Trina Small.
Aye.
Janelle Woodward.
Aye.
Mia Cooper.
Aye.
Roddy Boonchoy.
Aye.
Sheilanine Cruz Gonzalez.
Yes.
Babatunde Ilori.
Aye.
Gabriela Tivitian.
Aye.
Amy Nguyen Hernandez.
Aye.
Todd Collins.
Aye.
It is unanimous. The motion carries.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, Sarah. We will now take up item 1, which we're very excited for. And I know we have some callers later. Once we get to the end of item 1, we'll open that back up so that they could share their thoughts. Item 1 is an informational item related to California's state and federal accountability system. This item will be presented by Cindy Kazanis and Kimberly Mudhank. When CDE staff is ready to go, you can begin. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Chair Green. This is Cindy Kazanis, the Director of the Analysis, Measurement, and Accountability Reporting Division, and I'm pleased to kick off the presentation for item 1. We are expecting a long presentation today and hopefully a really robust discussion as Dr. Glover Woods, I think, impressed upon all of you the importance of the work that you're going to hear about today. The first thing we wanted to start off with is just a quick overview of the agenda and the topics we're going to cover. We are going to be joined by a colleague from West Ed to discuss the guiding principles for the California School Dashboard. And then we're going to move into differentiated assistance, which of course is the state's system of looking at how to support our local educational agencies. That conversation will include an overview of the current eligibility criteria and then a one year proposal for eligibility criteria to use status only data from the 2022 dashboard. So again, a 1 year change because of the requirements that you're going to hear about that we only use status. The other topics we're going to cover is a couple of proposals around making information available on the dashboard prior to the quest to become an indicator, and part of that is our teacher assignment outcome data on which is currently on DataQuest. We've spent quite a bit of time on this particular topic, and we're really excited to be able to share out the fact that we have released data on our teachers and what we're calling our teacher assignment monitoring outcome data report on our DataQuest site. We're going to talk a little bit about our ad hoc work group and what work is ahead of them to include teacher assignment data from the state in Priority 1 on the dashboard. We will also cover, and you've already heard a couple of callers on this today, so there's a lot of excitement around putting information around our science assessments on the dashboard as well. And then we will conclude with the 2022 dashboard update and some information around a new graphic that we've been developing to display status only information. You will also see really a robust set of resources that we have put forward, and we kicked off actually yesterday, to support our local educational agencies to navigate the dashboard as we return to state and federal accountability this year. So the first topic to introduce, and I am delighted today to have Eric Crane with us, who is a Senior Research Associate and Project Director from the Region 15 Comprehensive Center at West Ed. Eric is a longtime researcher and educator, or rather a researcher around education in California, and prior actually to working at West Ed, worked at the Department of Education. And he is going to introduce and walk you through the proposed updated California School Dashboard principles. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Director Cazanes. Chair Green, Vice Chair Manansella, distinguished CPAG members, Dr. Glover Woods, good morning. I'm Eric Crane. I'm a Senior Research Associate and Project Director at West Ed. And like many of you, I've been at this work for a long time. I remember standing up CPAG or being with the department as the department and the board as the board began this process of the new dashboard. And even before and earlier than that, the prior system that we had with the Academic Performance Index. And it's just a really exciting step today to be talking about principles for the California School Dashboard. So let's just launch into it. I represent the Region 15 Comprehensive Center at West Ed today, and the Comp Center at West Ed is one of 19 federally funded comprehensive centers. We provide support to state departments of education, and we work in California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. Our focus is on providing high quality, intensive capacity building services to state clients. And we focus on identifying, implementing, and sustaining effective evidence-based programs, practices, and interventions that support improved educator and student outcomes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the dashboard principles and the work leading up to them. In my role at West Ed, I have the honor to be a convener of a community of practice of many states. I think we, at last count, had 38 states that participated in at least one meeting. We come together to talk about accountability issues and what folks are wrestling with as they implement, decide technical properties of, communicate about, link to support related to their accountability system. So it's a really neat opportunity. Like I said, I'm honored and privileged to be able to do that work. And the staff from the California Department of Education are included among some of the active participants in that community of practice. So it gives me a little bit of a perspective on what's going on in other states. And there's always a lot of questions about what California is doing. I think in many ways, California's accountability system with its transparency and clarity about communication is a model nationally. So what we're doing today and what we're going to be talking about today with the principles is just another step in that work. As I mentioned, the top-notch communication and transparency of California is furthered by the decision to articulate some principles for the dashboard. This is not something that is required by the Every Student Succeeds Act. It is something that California is doing voluntarily to help clarify and give some more of a framework for some of the tricky decisions related to the dashboard that need to be made. As Dr. Glover Woods mentioned in her remarks, the COVID pandemic caused us to rethink some of the aspects of the accountability. And when there are principles that can be referenced and pointed to. It can make the decision making and the communication about decisions even easier and clearer. So some of the context for this was that there have been changes in CDE leadership, and some of the staff who had been instrumental in earlier decisions related to the dashboard no longer with the department. Likewise, at the state board, the turnover of some key folks who had been instrumental in standing up the then new dashboard in the early years of it are no longer on the state board. And so getting some common understanding about the principles underpinning it was a priority. So CDE reached out to Region 15 Comprehensive Center to help with the discussion and documentation of a set of principles. And again, that's what we'll be talking about today. So a little bit about the request. There was a lot of success when CDE was talking about the development of a growth model. And back before the state board in January of 2017, a set of principles were presented that really did help put some framing around the discussion. And so that was sort of a key context piece when thinking about what we might do at this point in talking about dashboard principles. So CDE's request was for the Comprehensive Center to provide content expertise, to facilitate the conversation about principles among AMARD leadership, to present draft of the principles to the Technical Design Group, and this presentation today to CPAG, to take the lead in documenting the discussion and revising the principles, and then ultimately to bring these before the State Board of Education and make that presentation. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to read through the principles, and as I'm going along, if you have questions and comments, please note them down. And then when we get to the last of the principles, looking forward to robust discussion at that point. But I'm just going to step through them. Dashboard Principle 1 is that the system focuses on elements that express the state's priorities for a well-rounded, well-supported education and makes space for what is valued locally. Principle 2, the system promotes equity through focus on student group opportunities and performance. Principle 3, the dashboard system gives equal weight to each indicator. Principle 4, the dashboard system values high performance and growth equally. Principle 5, reports transparently and comprehensively at the state, district, school, and student group levels. Principle 6, promotes effective visualization, clear communication, and thorough documentation. Dashboard Principle 7, reflects technical quality through measures that are valid and reliable. And then the first of two that really hit on today's work, Dashboard Principle 8, leverages the expertise and perspectives of a broad set of educational partners and community members, definitely relevant to what we're doing today. Principle 9, the dashboard system promotes coherence between data reporting and support improvement programs. And another that hits on the work today quite closely is that the dashboard system is subject to continuous revision and improvement. So the inclusion of principles, as I said, not a mandatory step, but an optional step that the state is moving into voluntarily, part of that commitment to continuous revision and improvement. So these are the dashboard principles, and I'm hoping that there's some comment, reaction to any of these. I can easily move up and down the slide deck to show a principle again. But the framing question for you all today is, what input and feedback do CPAG members have around the dashboard principles? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate you partnering and doing the work around surfacing those 10 principles. I'm going to start with Todd, and then Amy, and then Janelle. So Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for that presentation. That was interesting, and I'm going to run back and find the January 2017 CDE presentation so I can educate myself. My reaction to this was there seemed to be something missing from my perspective. When you're designing a product, an important question that you have to ask is who is it for, and what are their needs, and what specific problems are they trying to solve? And I think those are important to include as design principles for something like this, because otherwise we don't really know what we can describe it, but we don't really know what it's for. So I took a whack at that. I think the two primary audiences are, and I'm sure there are others, but these are the two that I focus on, are parents and school boards. Parents because they are responsible for their kids, and school boards because they are responsible for their districts. And the problems they're trying to solve, I think, for parents are to find the schools and districts that are the best fit for their kids, and to understand and advocate for improvement in the schools and districts that they attend. And then for boards, I think it's to understand district and school performance and how that changes over time. Because what you're really trying to do as a school board member is, get your district to improve over time. Another principle that I think applies to both these groups, since they are neither is professional educators, neither has a lot, both are essentially volunteers in their jobs and they don't have a lot of time to spend, and I think this is an important principle, is that it should be easy to interpret and easy to compare over time and across districts. I think I know as a school board member, that's a critical thing that I look for, and it's a critical design feature that I look for. And then finally, I think it should drive districts toward authentic improvement versus patchwork compliance. And I think that's an overarching thing of any accountability system. You've really got to worry about whether you're trying to get people to authentically improve sustainably across large groups of kids through their whole organization, as opposed to flip a red square to an orange square. And we know there's a lot of accountability behavior in our system. And I think a critical design principle of something like this is to say, no, this isn't about compliance. It isn't about accountability behavior. It's about driving authentic improvement. I think those are all important to add because by and large, I'll be honest, I don't think the dashboard does a particularly good job at those things today. And so hopefully by articulating those principles clearly and laying them out, it will help the team focus on ways to improve so they can serve those critical audiences better. Thanks. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Todd. Next, we'll go to Amy.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the fact that we set out to say the reason why we are doing this dashboard and what we will put on this dashboard is based on these priorities. And I think it's important, similar to what Todd was saying, is beyond just what the priorities are, but also communicating to whom are we trying to reach with this information. For me, the dashboard priorities really does match what a school does from the superintendent lens. I like that one of our priorities is promoting that visualization, clear communication through documentation. I think it's important that our families and our staff see what it means to have that both high performance and growth equally. And that's why dashboard priority 4 is a really important piece for what I see in the dashboard. I've always enjoyed being able to see, yes, the colors are good for the, red, green, and such, but knowing that we are looking at both high quality and improvement. Being able to identify and recognize both is really important as we go through that growth mindset and the ability of what the school district does that makes the difference for the student groups that we are serving. And then the last priority that I think is really important and one that we should promote readily with the outside public is that we are trying to have continuous revisions and improvement. No, the product that we have now isn't always going to be the product that we will continue with because we will continue to evaluate as we go along. And I like the fact that we've already said that out front So it isn't, well, yesterday you said this and tomorrow you're saying that, but knowing that there's a reason in what the work is about. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Janelle, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues and their comments. First, I very much appreciate the principles that ground us in the why behind the dashboard. I also appreciate that there is the flexibility for districts to have their local measurements as well. That's very important because not all districts are the same. I think it's really important as we talk about equity that we ensure that our dashboard and our reporting does not mask groups that may not be performing as well. So I think about English learners in that, and I know that's coming up. So I just want to draw that out. Finally, when we talk about the usefulness of the dashboard and who it's for, thinking about parents and about school boards, I believe that often we forget our teachers. And if we forget our teachers and if the dashboard doesn't have value for them, then we can lose a lot of the meaning and the purpose behind this. And so I want us just to consider that as we move forward. And again, thinking about what Todd said about usefulness versus compliance, the last thing we want to do is go back to the days of the CST and the API. And so we want to make sure that this is really grounded as we roll it out. I know that these are things that the team already knows, but having just come from a leadership position in a high achieving school district, this is really important to my heart, is that it is about every single child making growth, and that we have to stay centered on that and not just who's getting the most improvement around the state. Because if we get back to that mindset, then we risk doing more harm for our vulnerable students than good. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Janelle. And just to let CPAG members know the order continuing on, we'll have Diane and then Bootsy, Babatunde, and then Sheilaline. So go ahead, Diane.
Hi, thank you. I feel a little bit like, finally, I'm so glad to see some priorities on. We've been having this conversation an awful long time and kind of stumbling around with what in effect are priorities. And I'm glad to see them in print and in discussion and getting fleshed out. So first of all, I'm hugely grateful for that. And agree with what my colleagues have been saying. Todd's comment about it that needs to be easy to use and comparable is really, I do think that needs to be added in the language of those priorities, because everything, it keeps getting more and more complicated and more technical in terms of the types of things that are on there. And we've got to keep that in mind, that the people that are reading and using this are not educational researchers, but are other sorts of experts, and they need to be able to understand what they're looking at. I have some concern about priority 2, I think it's 2 or 3, the one that's about the equal weight for each indicator. I understand it, and yeah, that's it. I understand it in terms of intent and everything, but we keep adding indicators, which in effect, if we give equal weight to each one of them, we have watered down the weight of some of the indicators that we initially said were really critical mass importance. And that concerns me, in that I don't want us to give equal weight to everything blindly. And I think we need to think this through. Just as an example, if the academic indicator is an important one for schools, which I think by definition it is, we want our kids to achieve academically, does that have the exact same weight as a graduation rate, or as the chronic absenteeism, or are they all truly equally important? And I'm not here to argue a point one way or another. I just think we need to think this through, especially considering we talk about the fact that the dashboard is subject to review and improvement, which means it's going to be changing constantly to some degree or another. And again, I get back to, there are things we're putting on the dashboard that I think are important to measure, I don't think they are as important as some other things. So I think it's a discussion that needs to be had.
Thank you, Diane. Bootsy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for putting together this list of priorities so clearly so that we can see exactly, what the idea is behind the dashboard. I appreciate that. My first comment, Diane, I find that you and I are always sort of having like parallel comments in some way, but I actually wanted to know about priority one and additional indicators that might lead to equitable outcomes. So sort of the opposite of Diane's idea about watering them down. I do feel as though there are opportunities to measure things that some of our students who have traditionally appeared as challenged based on the metrics that we do measure, that we have opportunities to measure things like additional indicators for social emotional well-being, gate identification, maybe what kinds of cross-curricular opportunities are available, maybe like something around how many hours high school students work, including the care that they give in the home. I feel like the indicators that we have right now give a very clear picture for some student groups, but don't give a completely clear picture for all of our student groups. And so in terms of just equitable, having an equitable lens of who our students are and how that leads to their performance, I think it's important that we, maybe address some additional indicators that may or may not have to be equally weighed, to Diane's point, but should definitely be discussed at some point. And then the second priority that I wanted to address was priority two. I think we do a great job at focusing on performance, maybe not as great a job as focusing on opportunities, right? So I know that, again, there are schools, districts, and student groups that continue to perform at the same level, whether that's a high level or a low level. And so we are not necessarily seeing how the focus on performance leads to opportunities that make change, right? So we might do a arguably good job on identifying opportunities, but not necessarily looking at this data. Do we see so much change from year to year between student groups, districts, schools that are reflected in our data? So that is all I have for comment.
Thank you, Bootsy. Now turn it over to Babatunde.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. And I appreciate all the comments from our fellow CPAG members. And thank you for this presentation. I think, laying out these priorities is very important, and I appreciate this review. My feedback is around a couple of the priorities. I'll start with priority one, and before I jump into my feedback on priority one, one of the kind of the key things I always think about is like, as a system, as a state system, what do we value, right, is a big question. Like, what do we value? And a few of the CPAG members, we just stated things like, student achievement is really important, and growth and those types of things. And then the next question is, okay, well, what do we value? And then what do we measure, right? And then, of course, it takes some resources and energy to measure those things. And so when I was thinking about principle one, and to Bootsy, your point about that, there's a part of me that thinks, there's almost too many measures that makes it too confusing. But then there's a part of me, are we really measuring what we value, though, too, right? And so there's this back and forth intellectual battle I have in my head with that. One of the things that I think we may want to think about as we think about this principle one is some states have adopted graduate profiles. And I think graduate profiles provide a way for us to clearly define when we say well-rounded well-supported education, right, that our students have this, it provides more of a clear definition on what that means. I think our college and career readiness indicator gives you some proxies or like data points, right? But from a parent perspective, from a board member perspective, to Todd Collins mentioned this in his comments, does that make sense, right? And I think that the simplification of communication can help with those things. So I think potentially thinking about some type of like graduate profile definition, if you will, would be something that I think we should consider, especially when we look at principle number 1. The next thing I do want to touch on, and I think it was Diane who mentioned this, is priority 3 with the equal weighting. I share a concern about that as well. I think that so if you think about like the current dashboard indicators, and then eventually there'll be colors again, right? Obviously, we're not, I understand the logic behind not having colors now, but you take something like discipline, that is clearly something that, unfortunately, there could be nefarious things that happen where people can mask discipline data, and then we're making that equally weighted to something that, like, for example, like the state assessment results. I think that's a challenge there, because I could see districts intentionally, like, almost pretending that they don't have certain discipline in their schools because of this equal weighting principle. And then the last thing I just want to touch on, and I think it's really important, is principle 4. This idea of growth, I think, is I would argue maybe potentially could be the highest priority, right? When students come in our system, what is our goal as educators, as school systems, is to help the student achieve and grow at high levels, right? And if we can do a really good job in measuring that in a way that is something like that could be a way across the state that makes sense. And I know that there's a lot of work that has been done on leveraging the state assessment for that in ELA and math. That's great. And I think that we just need to really look at what are ways that we can support this emphasis and this priority, because I think that student growth, especially measuring at the individual student level and following those students over time, is basically what matters the most as it relates to what our goal is and our purposes are as school systems, right? We're trying to make sure our students grow, and we want to accelerate that growth, especially because of COVID right now. So anyways, those are my comments, but I really appreciate this presentation and going back to these principles.
Thank you so much. I think I had my hands accidentally get out of order. So let me just tell you the order that we'll go in, and I'll make sure everyone gets covered. We'll go to Shilani next, then Jesse, then Ed, then Ron, then Tarina, then Roddy. So Shilani, go ahead. You can speak next. Oh, and sorry, just one quick reminder. Babatunde, thank you so much for referring to the 10 principles. We want to make sure that the public and we don't confuse these principles with the 8 state priorities. So thank you. You did a great job with that, Babatunde. These are the 10 principles that we're looking at. So thank you. So with that, go ahead, Shilani.
Thank you, Melanie. Just a couple things. I wanted to go back, I think maybe circle back to sort of the way Todd was framing it, and think about, for me, I think that these principles, I see them and I feel like they're very much describing the sort of the functionality of the dashboard, right? But I think in my mind, some of the issues that I see out in the field and practice is more around the purpose of the dashboard. And I'm not sure I see that fully articulated here. And I'll just describe it this way. I think sometimes it feels like the dashboard is designed to do 2 purposes, right? One, for the accountability purpose, right, that we know is important and we've had now for a couple decades. But I think we also have espoused this idea of that we want to see our districts and our schools going through engaging in a process of continuous improvement and using this information, this data they have to do that purpose, right? And I think when you try to have a dashboard like this, try to do both purposes, it ends up not doing either one well. And I'll just, I mean, I think there are many examples out there, but I'll give one example, and that's really around like what happens in practicality when a district has a group of students that may be in the green or the blue or even yellow, right? And our accountability system says, oh no, you don't need to worry about them because they're doing okay. You don't need to write to them in your LCAP. However, like let's just say hypothetically, you have like a large Asian population in your district, and because you have a mixed group, maybe some of them come from backgrounds that maybe traditionally don't do as well, maybe a Hmong group, but you also have a large, like say, Chinese group, right? I'm making this up, but like let's say so, but overall that group is in the green or blue, right? But a district is going to say, okay, great, these kids are doing really well. But in reality, we want those districts really to be digging in and saying, look, we have this cohort of students we know is not doing well within this group. How are we going to support them? And I see what happens is district will just take these colors and say, okay, nope, they're doing really well. We're going to focus on the ones that are in orange and red. And so I think I highlight that as an example of where does continuous improvement fit into the dashboard and how are we using this to drive systems change? I think in terms of transparency, it does an excellent job, right? Talking about the principle around transparency, it does an excellent job. But I'm concerned about us trying to have it do these multiple purposes and not supporting the system to sort of to really make the changes that we want to see. That's number one. I want to echo what Babatunde just mentioned about the graduate profiles and go back to the principle one and really thinking about like, are really the pieces that we're reporting in the indicators, are they really driving us to think about what is that well-rounded student, right? Are we focusing on all the components? I think there are dangers in that, right? I think a lot of us want to make sure that students are collaborative and communicative. And sometimes when we start measuring these things and trying to put them into dashboards, I think we sort of, they get sort of simplified. But I do think that I think this idea of a graduate profile is a really great idea. And I think I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jesse, go ahead.
So thanks so much. I won't take too much time. First, I just wanted to thank Eric for such a great presentation, and we're all very lucky to have such good research support at our disposal. It's interesting because I really agree with everything that my colleagues on the CPAG have said, and my notes here really started off with something that Jilin just mentioned, which is that that second purpose she mentioned about the dashboard, that it really should be an integral and useful tool for continuous improvement. So I marked that down as part of my notes. Now, in order to do that, if we look at some of the dashboard, well, it says priorities here, but let's not get those confused. But if you look at like 5 and 6, 5 is looking at transparency, and 6 is looking at the visualization and documentation. This isn't so much about these points themselves, but I just want to make sure that the state board and the department has a strategy in place to really reach out to stakeholders to make sure that these priorities are being met. That is, Jilin just said that transparency seems very, very good. I like the dashboard as well, but I feel like somewhat of an insider. I've really dug into it and seen it for so many years. The typical parent, and I might even argue the typical, say, teacher may not have done such a deep dive as all of us have. So I guess things like transparency are in the eye of the beholder. and so I want to make sure that the department makes an earnest effort to reach out to more typical users of this and make sure that things like transparency are very clear and that it's as useful as can be for those people that need the tool to leverage it to engage in continuous improvement. So that's kind of the only thing that I had to say. And these are, the whole idea to really reach out to stakeholders is, I think, also another priority. So these priorities are interlinked. It's obviously interlinked with number 10. but also with number 8, which leverages the expertise and perspectives of a broad set of educational partners and community members. So that's pretty much all I had to say. I think that, I guess, sorry, on number 3, again, I think we should try to get some feedback as to as the dashboard evolves and it's used for accountability, how might differential weights or weights for new indicators that are added be determined, because there are some arguments there that, you know, maybe we shouldn't have equal weight for everything. I think there are pros and cons to having equal weight or unequal weights. You know, having an equal weight is really straightforward, but having an unequal weight might even the playing field for certain districts and schools that might be able to excel on some indicators and others that would excel on different indicators, and it might give a more even playing field rather than give sort of absolute weight. And then there's also the argument that we actually might want to place more weight on things that we think are more important as a state. So I'll stop there, but thanks again to Eric and to all my CPAG colleagues, because, you know, I think all of your comments are great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, I have many points similar to Jesse and the others, but first I too want to extend appreciation to CDE and Eric for your presentation, and of course the partnership with WestEd, because I believe the guiding principles just provide clarity and expectations of the dashboard. I think the principles will increase communication and engagement between the LEAs and communities, and of course, from my lens of county offices to LEAs. But the principles are particularly helpful given that we've not had a full dashboard since 2019, and we're looking back at or looking forward as we develop a rhythm around discussions around the dashboard. But they also provide clarity of the principles that may contribute to more productive discussions between LEAs, especially around continuous improvement and how they relate to differentiated assistance and even LCAP development. I do think they'll be important to use for level setting. And as we get back into this rhythm of the dashboard, and will assist us in accountability discussions and policy decisions as we move forward and know that they're on the horizon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Next we'll have Ron, Tarina, and then Rodney. Go ahead, Ron.
Great, thank you for the time, and thank you to all my other CPAG members. As the conversation goes on, the thoughts continue to develop, or and I'm going to try to make sure my point doesn't get too much longer. But just thinking about again the purpose of the dashboard and our reporting to the public. The districts, our LEAs, do use the dashboard to kind of drive their LCAP, their decision making on what their plans are for years, and so. Based on that, I'm wondering if there's a way of tying dashboard to LCAP more transparently to allow districts to express through the dashboard what steps are being taken, what ideas are being used, what promises are being made to their districts, their students, and their parents. Kind of more as a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, that the dashboard is not just a snapshot of something that's happening, but also the steps that are in place to drive that improvement, to improve student outcomes, where it just shows progress in action versus something that's static. And as far as priorities, I've heard a lot of my colleagues mentioning priorities and weighting, equal weighting for different priorities within an LEA. Even possibly an opportunity for districts or LEAs to identify their priorities based on their LCAP and have those maybe more prominently placed in that dashboard. We see this with from students and parents and teachers trying to find what's available for them, what's being done for their particular student, their particular classroom, their particular site. Same thing at the district level or the county level, being able to identify the priorities, what's being done in those areas. Going back to principle one, it does make space for what's what's valuable locally. And so having that transparency and that identifier there, where we can see we're at this level in this certain indicator on our dashboard. Well, what's being done? What is in our LCAP that's going to provide for these improvements, and what steps are we taking to make those improvements happen?
Thank you so much, Ron. Tarina, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to all of my fellow CPAG members. You guys have said almost everything I've wanted to say, so I appreciate you. And thank you for everyone that has done the research at the CDE and as well as at West Ed. So my biggest concern is probably the same priorities that principles that everyone is talking about, because they relate to the priority. But what I want to say is what we did not discuss is how that translates to student success. And that's what it really should be. Whatever it looks like on the dashboard should be focused on student success and how those parents look at it. As Todd mentioned, those are our first customers, right? That really need to understand it. And how can people take a deeper dive to understand what it all means? I know we were sent the slide that says priorities and now it says principles. So even that confusion in itself, right, where it can be that misleading just with something so simple. Because, you know, when you think about the different groups and different districts and different schools, that have so many different variables that makes it difficult for student success, or maybe their direction on how students can be successful may be different than at another school, especially with weighing those principles equally. That's a little scary, but I just want to make sure that we're really focused on student success and what that looks like. And if that is what maybe a portrait of a graduate looks like, is that going to be universal across, you know, all schools, even though we know all schools are different. And I want to make sure that we're looking at a lens that all schools are different. No school is exactly the same. No student is exactly the same. No student group is exactly the same at other schools either. I just want to make sure that we're really focused on student success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tarina. I'm going to go to Roddy next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Melanie. And good morning, everyone. Happy New Year, particularly for everyone who's welcoming all the smiling faces flooding the schools right now. It's a good sight. It's a good feeling. I echo a lot of the sentiment of my colleagues, but I want to put a big shiny star next to Babatunde, his comments around principle number 1 and some of the follow-up conversations around well-rounded educations as well as the graduate profile. I'm heartened by these principles, and I'm cautiously optimistic about how they will actually manifest in the system itself. And I also appreciate the rationale for why this is happening. We have new leadership, and we are in a new era. Following this pandemic, we knew what the outcomes were prior to the pandemic. They were unacceptable. They were unsatisfactory. We saw disproportionality by race, by socioeconomic status, by language, by ability, and others. So if we want to instigate systems change, then how do we think about the outcomes that we're looking for? We know the behaviors at the local level are deeply influenced by our accountability system, and we know that our accountability system is driven by our outcomes. And so how do we look at this priority number or principle number 1 to get to the values or to get to the outcomes that we value as a community, and then evolve and build our accountability system so that they are aligned with that. We are seeing the emergence of graduate profiles across the state, either through strategic plans and through community dialogue. Is there a way that we can more systemically build those outcomes into our dashboard? I also want to mention that continuous improvement, critical. The change in our system is not a revolution, it's an evolution. But how do we improve on what we value as opposed to what we measure? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nancy, go ahead. Thank you for being so patient.
Good morning, everybody. I also just so many things that I am thinking about. I also wanted to focus on priority 1, but I'm just thinking a little bit like this as we have such a unique, special, and beautiful state. Focusing on what is valued locally that lead to student success. that reflect the state's priorities for a well-rounded and well-supported education. I think about, again, my work in various educational fields, and you really highlight and look at what is working uniquely in our local areas. I was kind of wordsmithing in my head, because when you make space for something, it's kind of like, making space for something. I want to really highlight and focus on what is valued. Each community is different, and kind of work with a little bit. That's kind of where my brain's at right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm not seeing any more comments from any CPAG members, so I think we're ready to continue on with the presentation. Again, thank you. Oh wait, Tarina, I'm sorry, I see your hand. Did you have another comment? Go ahead.
That was a legacy hand, sorry.
No, that's okay. I appreciate everyone using that feature. Thank you. So with that, CD, I think we're ready to continue on. Thank you, Eric. Or, I'm sorry, Eric Westhead, but go ahead, continue on with the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gratified by all the thoughtful engagement, and there were too many great points that were raised to respond to. I do want to respond to just one, because I think it would be of interest to the CPAG members, and it relates to Principle 3. I referred earlier to the perspective of getting to talk with lots of different states about their systems, and they asked questions about California's system. I know there was a lot of discussion about the equal weight. One of the comments that comes up the most is, folks officials at other state agencies will say things like, wait, California doesn't boil it all down to a single number? They don't weight indicators and combine to a single number? What's that about? And either the CDE folks, or if I'm in such a room and get a chance to engage, I explain that the decision was made very consciously, that in summarizing each indicator, the status and change on each indicator with a color, you're kind of forcing the discussion to be about the indicators. It kind of stimulates and promotes conversation about the indicators separately, and gives that equal weight, and gives that equal opportunity for deeper discussion. So I'm not here to advocate for one or another point of view, but I will say that that is a feature of the California system that does get a lot of reaction from officials at other state agencies. That the production and reporting of a color for the indicators kind of supports that conversation about indicators, and it's not boiled down to a single one number summary. We've been down that road with the Academic Performance Index. So just a quick comment on that. I think there were other comments about the purpose of the dashboard system, and for that, I want to invite back up Director Kazanis for some remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for helping to lead the conversation and set really the table for this conversation. I neglected to introduce how these comments are integrated into the item that will go before the State Board of Education in September. So let me do that now, and then I can talk about the purpose of the dashboard. Specifically, the California Practitioners Advisory Group provides feedback. You represent the State Board. You're the Title I group that is required under the Every Student Succeeds Act, and in that role, you are experts in your own fields, and we value that feedback, and we include that when we represent this topic or these topics before the State Board of Education. So you will see in any item that comes before CPAG and then goes on to the State Board of Education, which is practically every single item that my team does, a summary of feedback from the California Practitioners Advisory Group. And because the advisory group does not vote on items, we try to summarize the comments and the feedback that is received, again, from the members. And so we will be taking your input, putting it in a summary. You may not see actual changes to the principles at this time because the board still needs to have this same conversation. So they will do that at their September meeting. I think it was really helpful, though, to hear from you that it would be nice to have the purpose stated up front. And that is actually on the California School Dashboard homepage. And so let me just read it to you so that you're aware of it, and we will definitely include that in our information to the State Board of Education. And that is the California School Dashboard provides parents and educators with meaningful information on school and district progress so they can participate in decisions to improve student learning. We heard so much today, and we really are grateful for the conversation. And we have a couple more parts to this presentation, and so I need to defer to Sarah. Are we going to be? We're going to keep going. All right, so with that, let me switch over to speakers from myself to a team member, Kimberly Munhank, who will introduce the next item.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning, everyone. So just to be clear, after the conclusion of this section, after we go through our comments, we will take a break. So I just want to set the stage there for everyone. And that is not to limit your discussion in any way, shape, or form, just to allow you to know that that's when we can go through. So today we're going to walk through differentiated assistance using the 2022 dashboard. And to start us off, I'm going to go through a review in a section of review slides about differentiated assistance to refresh all of our memories and maybe perhaps for some of you to truly introduce in a little bit more detail exactly what differentiated assistance is and how we determine eligibility for differentiated assistance. So we're going to start off here with the levels of DA, or differentiated assistance, that exist in the system. First off, there's level 1, which is support for all. And all districts, charter schools, and county offices of education are eligible for general assistance. Level 2 is what we refer to as DA, or differentiated assistance. And this is what we're talking about today. Those that are eligible based on their performance in each LCFF state priority area. Now, differentiated assistance has a timeline for both eligibility and exit. So we make eligibility determinations for differentiated assistance annually, and that follows the release of the dashboard. And many of your comments earlier in the previous section talked about, the link between those two things. Now, we want to be clear that differentiated assistance is not a status. You don't exit from assistance. Because there is support for all, you are always eligible for assistance. It's just which level of assistance you receive, and it's qualifying for level 2 differentiated assistance support, where the criteria comes into play. However, assistance is always available through level 1 support. The eligibility criteria for differentiated assistance includes both state and local indicator results for each priority area. And that's reported on the dashboard and used to determine eligibility for both districts and county offices of education. And so I'm going to walk you through the priority areas, the 10 state priority areas, that signify how and the criteria with which you become eligible for level 2 differentiated assistance. I believe there are 3 slides here, so we're going to walk through first the eligibility criteria for priorities 1 through 5. So as you can see here, priorities 1, 2, and 3, basics, implementation of state academic standards, parent and family engagement. These 3 priority areas are all local indicators, and therefore the criteria for becoming eligible for differentiated assistance in each of these priority areas is that you do not meet for 2 or more years the eligibility criteria or the MET criteria for local performance. So these 3 priority areas are covered as local indicators. Priority area number 4 is pupil achievement. And as you can see by how much room it takes up on the slide, it's quite an interesting, has a lot of interesting criteria in it. This encompasses where all of our academic standards come into play for qualifying for differentiated assistance. And you are eligible for assistance under with priority 4 if you receive, and this is in a normal dashboard year, red on both English language arts or math assessments, red on English language arts or math, and orange on the other assessment, then a status of very low on the English learner progress indicator. So, and in 2019, because we only had status for the LP, that was based on a very low status in 2019. Those are the 3 criterions: red in both, red in one, orange in the other, or a status of red or very low on the LP. For priority number 5, pupil engagement, we're looking at a red in the graduation rate indicator or a red on the chronic absenteeism indicator. For our final 5 priority areas, we have a mix of both state indicators and local indicators. Priority area number 6 is school climate. The criteria for that is either red on the suspension rate indicator or not met for 2 or more years on local performance. So that is a combination of both a state priority and a local priority. Priority number 7, access to a broad course of study, not a board course of study, is not met for 2 or more years on local performance. And priority number 8 is our final state indicator priority, where outcomes of a broad course of study impacts with a red on the college/career indicator, or CCI. Priority numbers 9 and 10 only apply to county offices of education, coordination of services for expelled pupils, and coordination of services for foster youth. Those are both local indicators, and you would qualify for those 2 priority areas, meaning not met for 2 or more years on local performance. So you get, based on all of those criteria, you are eligible for differentiated assistance based in 3 ways. You could, number 1, become eligible by only using your state indicators. So you need to have 1 student group meet the criteria in at least 2 different priority areas. So for example, you could see perhaps your Hispanic student group becomes red for chronic absenteeism and suspension. Therefore, they have a red criterion in 2 different priority areas, priority 5 and priority 6, and therefore that Hispanic group would make your district or COE eligible for assistance through state indicators only, or method 1. The other method we have is through local indicators only. So if you achieve not met for 2 or more years in at least 2 priority areas, so for example, priority area 1 and 2 are both local priority areas, you would also be eligible for assistance. That's not based on student group performance, that's just based on local indicators. And finally, you could be eligible for assistance with a combination of both state indicators from student groups and local indicators. So for this example, 1 or more student groups meets the criteria in 1 priority area, and the LEA or COE receives a not met for 2 or more years in one of the local priority areas. So for example, parent engagement, etc. What you see on the screen right now is a readout of how LEAs in 2019 qualified for differentiated assistance through the 3 different methods. So as you can see, overwhelmingly, method 1, state indicators only, is how most LEAs became eligible for differentiated assistance. In this case, it was 331 LEAs were identified for assistance in 2019. Additionally, we had 2 LEAs qualify under method 2, and no LEAs qualified under method 3. So we had a total of 333, which is a great number and easy to remember, of LEAs or COEs that qualified in 2019. Now, the breakdown by which student groups qualified LEAs for differentiated assistance is presented on both this slide and the next. And as you start, your brain starts to add these up, right? The old math teacher and me, you will notice that this is going to highly exceed 333. And that's because you only need 1 student group in order to qualify for differentiated assistance. But you could be a district with multiple student groups in differentiated assistance, okay? So once it's that threshold of 1, and then you could have more. So you can see on this slide that these are our ethnic student group, racial ethnic student groups, with Black and African Americans with 53 LEAs eligible, American Indian Alaska Native 28, Hispanic 42, Pacific Islander 8, White 31, and 2 or more races 9, with Asian American and Filipino student groups not qualifying any LEAs for differentiated assistance. When we look at our other student groups, such as homeless, English learners, foster youth, students with disabilities, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students, this is where our math really, you can see it exceeds that 333 vote, with 98 students for homeless, 57 for English learners, 101 students for foster youth, 187, which is our largest eligible student group population, students with disabilities, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students with 62. Now to clarify, this is just a good reminder for folks as we move into and discuss things for 2022. Charter schools were identified for differentiated assistance back in 2019. However, they are not eligible to be identified this year in 2022. And that's because there were changes made to the eligibility criteria following that identification process in 2019 that literally says that it changed the criteria drastically. So therefore, charter schools are going to be eligible for identification again next year in 2023. So following the release of the 2023 dashboard. So now let's walk through what the changes are that we're looking at and what the State Board will be looking at for decisions at the September meeting. Now, why am I here talking about differentiated assistance methodology and why we need to make changes? Well, because of AB 130, California was required to only use status levels for the 2022 dashboard. So with this limitation, we don't have colors. And our current criteria, as adopted by the State Board, is all based on colors, as you could see, with the word red appearing multiple places. Additionally, only method 1 is available for 2022. We will not have any local indicators. While there were local indicators on the 2021 dashboard, they were there for informational purposes only. So we will not have any LEAs or COEs have not met for 2 or more years appear. So we're only going to have method 1 to be able to look at. Additionally, there is no college career indicator on the 2022 dashboard. And that is because we did, state testing was optional in the 2020-21 school year, and therefore we're missing a large population of eligible criteria, and that is why the CCI will not be showing up on the 2022 dashboard. Now, back prior to the March 22 State Board meeting, we went in and looked through and did some technical work and did an investigation into the use of status as a proxy for color. And so we discovered through technical work that the lowest status level, either very low or for chronic absenteeism and our suspension rate indicators very high, turns out to be a decent proxy for red. However, we did discover that the other status levels, low, medium, and high, are not suitable proxies for the corresponding colors. For example, low being a proxy for orange, or high on our chronic absenteeism and suspension rate as a proxy for orange. And it really increased the level of error in our eligibility determinations, as you can see on this slide. So for color, schools with a color in 2019 for the chronic absenteeism indicator, 79% who earned a very high also had a red in 2019. And 84% who earned very low also had a blue. However, you can see the correlation isn't that strong. And obviously it's not supposed to be, right? Our 5x5 grid is supposed to provide differential outcomes, and it's not supposed to be highly correlated to status. So in a way, it's a nice little check on our system. And I just want to remind everyone that, again, very high is the worst place you can be for chronic absenteeism. Sounds good, but sometimes we talk about very low being the worst. But our 2 indicators have a different measure for that one. So without further ado, here is what we are proposing for the 2022 differentiated assistance methodology. We are suggesting, again, because as you can see, there's only 3 priority levels on your screen instead of 10. We take away all of those local indicator priorities since they cannot be used as criteria. There's no not met for 2 or more years available. Therefore, we only have, and we don't have a CCI, so we have 3 priority areas left to play with. Our suggestion is that for priority 4 pupil achievement, qualification is through achieving a very low on both the English language arts and math academic indicator, or receiving a very low on the LB. Those are the 2 ways that you would be able to qualify. For priority 5, we're looking at very low on the graduation rate indicator or very high on the chronic absenteeism indicator. And finally, for priority 6, we're looking at very high on the suspension rate indicator. We went through and looked at the 2019 data, and we played with it a little bit because it's the last set of data that we have available to us. We are very well aware that this is not the 2022 data. We don't even have it yet from districts, so we don't have anything to play with there. So we went through and utilized this selection of criteria that you see here and applied it to the 2019 results. And this is how things differ. If we take the 2019 differentiated assistance results that I showed before, remember 333, if we exclude the CCI, that number reduces down to 297 eligible differentiated assistance schools. When we use the criteria that we just suggested there, utilizing only status and priority areas 4, 5, and 6, we would see a 399 LEAs identified for priority 2 differentiated assist or for level 2 support or differentiated assistance. How this breaks down is across all of these areas. You're going to see an increase in identification across all of the student groups, except for Hispanic, that actually goes down by three LEAs being identified. And if we look here for our other student groups, we also see an increase across all of our program groups as well, dramatically increasing with students with disabilities, which was already the larger group, and obviously it gets much larger with this simulation. So with that, and looking through our criteria and what we have available to us, we are looking for your input and feedback that you have around the proposed adjusted methodology for determining differentiated assistance in 2022.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. CPAG members, you have the question on the screen, but also are there any clarifying questions that folks might have? We'll start with Ron, and then we'll go to Todd. Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you. Yeah, just clarification on the decrease for the Hispanic students. I'm wondering if that was just from indicators that might have been in a spot that didn't identify them as very low, but that I just want some clarification there as to how that number changed in a direction that's not an increase as we see with the other student groups.
I'm not privy to exactly what would happen, but I will remind you that on most of the 5x5 charts, you are able to earn a red with a secondary status of low or high, right, for other indicators. So that's second to bottom row, right? If you decrease in performance, you'll earn a red. So it might turn out that for those identified LEAs, they were earning a red with not very low or very high performance at that bottom level, and then rather they were earning their red through not improving and actually decreasing in performance. So that's most likely what happened.
Thank you, Ron. Todd, go ahead.
Thanks. Quick question. Maybe everybody else already knows this. When you talk about being eligible for assistance, is the assistance, is it optional for districts to take the assistance? Can they say no, thank you?
No. So this is the assistance that's provided by the County Offices of Education through the system of support. So all of assistance is, and again, so becoming eligible for level 2 support means that you're already receiving level 1 support across the board from county offices, and you're walking up to level 2.
And Todd, just to clarify, this is Cindy Kazanis again. There is some flexibility there, and so I don't know if I don't mean to put our new director on the spot. William, if you would be able to respond to that question, or Todd, if we can get back to you directly. The people that handle eligibility and the actual programming of our differentiated assistance team is located within a different division than ourselves.
Yeah, Todd, so if I understand your question correctly, so the differentiated assistance team will look at the different data, and then we're supporting the county offices with their differentiated assistants who then support the LEAs with that. And so it's a different type of mechanism that triggers the LEAs with the DA, and the support comes from the county offices.
That makes sense, but just to make sure I understood it clearly, it sounds like if I'm in a district and I show up on the screen, if I hit the screen, my eligibility means if they want me to take it, I'm going to take it. I don't have the option of saying no.
And that's what we can get clarification for. So I've just started attending this support meetings, and so I'll get clarification for you on that.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd. Next, we'll have Jesse and then Sharina. Go ahead, Jesse.
Thanks so much. And Kim, thank you for such a clear presentation. I just have one quick clarification, and that is the example that you put up was for chronic absenteeism, and you said that, you know, the status is really a good distinguisher for the extreme colors, that is red and blue. But I just wanted some clarification that this was also run with with other metrics as well with similar results. And that's what led to this determination that status is a decent indicator of red.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah. Yes, that's correct. We ran it for all of the different indicators, and we're able to, again, present that information at the March State Board meeting.
Thank you, Jesse. Now and thank you, Kimberly. Thank you. Next, we'll have Tarina. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Kimberly. I always love your presentations. They're always so great, and you talk fast, just like I like, because it keeps me alert. So I just wanted to ask another clarifying question, even though I know the answer. But so charter schools that also included DAS schools are not eligible?
So no. So DAS schools are obviously separate. And walk through different things. And so they're actually, we do not have any differentiation. I know, so I need a different word for differentiated assistance for DAS eligibility and non-DAS eligibility within the LCFF identification process. So they are all gone through together. And while you can separate them out and look at them differently, right, and look at patterns, it's not different criteria you utilize there.
Okay. And also, and just because I'm dealing with a lot, and I know you mentioned AB 104, and of course, I've been enrolling a lot of students that have been set on that path by their previous school. And let me tell you, it's not looking good for those students to even complete within this 2022-2023 school year based on their deficit of credits. So it didn't really increase their possibility of still graduating within their class. But also, I just wanted to talk about the student groups, the homeless students, the English learners, the foster youth. Are we might consider maybe even adding the LBGQT plus on there, because they also need assistance in schools. And I know that might not be, you might say, well, they might fall under this, but they need other support outside of what the other groups need as well. Thank you.
And I can help with that question just because I think it's important to address it directly. The student groups that are currently in the dashboard are defined in state law. And so they would have to come in as their own. I can tell you that we absolutely report out on students who choose to share that information with their school districts, who then share it with the Department of Education. So you do see this information in some form reported out. And then, of course, there are things like the Healthy Kids Survey, which I think students can also share at a anonymously about themselves and how they identify. But it is a little, we have a lot of guardrails that come with accountability. Hopefully you had a chance to catch our presentation in July when we talked about all these rules that we have to follow, and we don't have a lot of flexibility in some of these things. So while we do have 13 student groups, that is not one of the current student groups, but it's a great point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tarina. Now we'll go to Sheilanine and then Babatunde. Go ahead, Sheilanine.
Thanks. I want to ask a question about the data simulations for the student groups, specifically the English learners. I think that's slide, it's 36 in the one that I have. I'm not sure what it is you have. But I think, and I think we got a letter talking about how you saw large increases for a lot of the other student groups, for homeless, foster youth, students with disability, but a very small increase for English learners. And knowing really the very low outcomes of English learners, can you speak a little bit to why there aren't as many districts that are identified for English learners as opposed to some of these other larger groups, and why we don't see a large growth as well, like we've seen with the other groups?
So as you could see, we're walking through the criteria, right? And the criteria across all of the priority areas is the same for all student groups. So we're looking at a red coloration, which indicates within our 5x5 system of the lowest level of performance in the prior identification cycle. And then here we're looking for a status of very low performance. So as you can see in the numbers here, we do see that there are 46 LEAs, if we look back at the 2022, that would have a very low performance area in either the priority 4, which is our academics, right? Priority 5, which is graduation rate, or chronic absenteeism, or priority area 6, which is suspension. And so it's a really important point to bring up constantly that and remind folks that it is across 2 different priority areas. So while you can have very low performance within one, it's catching that second priority area to go through. And so and the system is identified to support and identify the lowest performing groups across our criteria levels. And presently, across all of the different ways that English learners are identified, which, and again, by different priorities, the definition of an English learner is different, but across all of those different priority areas, English learners are not at achieving the same low criteria levels as other student groups.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to, and let me make sure I get this order again. So we're going to go to Babatunde next, then we're going to go to Tarina, and then we're going to go to Ed. Go ahead, Babatunde.
Thank you. I had a clarifying question on how the methodology, how this was actually calculated. And so I know that N size for subgroup, in general, to get a color, it's 30 or more students. I guess my question is that when it was below 30, if you had 11 or more, you would see at least like the results, essentially, like the actual achievement level or what have you, or calculation. However, you would not see a color returned. I'm curious with this methodology for 2022, is it including the 11 or more subgroup, or is it only, are we looking at the 30 or more and simulating based on that?
That is a wonderful clarifying question, and I appreciate it so much. So to be clear, we are not removing the minimum N size for accountability. So for most of our student groups, that is a minimum N size of 30. But I will remind everyone, for the LEA level, it is 15 for homeless and for foster youth. So you do qualify for differentiated assistance at the LEA level. Those student groups are held accountable once we hit that minimum N size of 15. So that's different than ESSA, where it's 30 across the board for all of our student groups. So yes, very good clarifying question. This year's dashboard results will be very similar, in that you will be able to see when you are eligible for being held accountable at those different N size levels. There'll be a signal for that, and specifically, we're not going to remove those N sizes. So the simulation was done with that same N size in mind.
Thank you, Kimberly. Sorry, Tarina, I think I had seen your hand from before. So let me just check in. Tarina, did you have anything else you wanted to ask right now?
No, ma'am.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm going to go to Ed, and then after Ed, I'll go to Jesse. Go ahead, Ed.
Thanks, Melanie. I just wanted to go back. So again, in a county superintendent role, I believe it was Todd who was referencing is differentiated assistance optional, if you will. And so I just wanted to go back to that based on my experience. So yes, while a district may be eligible, we have approached it from a required standpoint with our districts. But I think what's really important to emphasize is the nature and approach that we are taking as county offices coming alongside districts. The dashboard is probably one of the most useful tools in identifying areas of improvement for students. So we come alongside districts in partnership and look at it from a perspective of continuous improvement and looking at systems in particular. So again, just I know Todd put that out there, and there was the acknowledgement of clarification, but I just wanted to speak to it from my experience.
Thank you so much, Ed. Jesse, go ahead.
So this is a slight tangent, so thank you for your indulgence ahead of time here. On slide 36, Kim gave us all a really nice sort of simulation of what the expected effect of identification of LEAs for differentiated assistance would be based on 2019 data. And we see that there's a dramatic increase across many of these groups. Just in the back of my head, I do have a concern here that with all of this additional identification, are we providing any additional support for delivering the additional supports that these districts are going to need from their county offices and districts? And I'm just putting it out there. It's not a question about this methodology. Like I said, it is a tangent, but it is in the back of my head that if we're identifying so many more districts for differentiated assistance, are there going to be the resources to deliver on that? And I just want us to all keep that in mind, and it's more of a note for the department and the state board to think about here.
Thank you so much, Jesse. I'm going to go to Bootsy. Go ahead, Bootsy.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jesse. The same thing. I just wanted to echo what you said, because the same thing has been standing out to me. In particular, as I look at some of these groups, I see that there are systems in place for them to maybe make use of the additional assistance. But one student group that the Black African American student group that has so many districts and LEAs being identified for assistance often lacks that extra, those extra systems that are there. And I just wanted to go on the record saying that, because it's an area where I think that we can focus a lot of our improvement efforts.
Thank you so much, Bootsy. Babatunde, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I left my my hand raised. Let me lower it.
No problem, no problem. I just want to make sure. I don't miss anybody. Roddy, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Similar question as Jesse. Just the high level question I'm pondering is, our county is going to be equipped for the surge in differentiated assistance folks. And then another question is indirect, but I think important, and that is, how successful have counties been in their supports for districts and DA? Do we have a statewide framework or consistency that gives us confidence in what these interventions will look like post-pandemic support for districts? And then just a clarifying question, per AB 130, are we going back to the old system when we do have CCI and growth, or is this methodology going to stick in subsequent years?
I wish I had my handy dandy chart here. Maybe, I don't know if it's in the later slides or not, but no, this is a one-off year for 2022, and that's why we're asking for this one-off proposal for differentiated assistance in 2022. Next year, We will obviously have 2 years of data for the majority of our state indicators, with only 1 year of data for CCI. So we're going to be looking at colors for most of our state indicators, and CCI having just status only next year. And then in 2024, we'll be back. It's 58, let's say.
And just to follow up on that, I don't know if you've modeled, but will there be a significant flux in districts again that are eligible for DA when we go back to the old methodology?
I can say that currently we are operating right in a data deficit at this moment. We do not have any data for 2022 to even anticipate, and it pains me to do, to do a simulation on 2019 data, right? Because that's all we have right now. So as data comes in, right, and as we look forward to see how things are moving on, we can do some of those additional simulations. But I think it's really important for us to, all note and acknowledge that 2022 is not 2019, right? We are going to see data that looks different, and we can't anticipate truly what that does look like. I can honestly say I've seen no data because we don't have it yet. So I think we all need to, move forward with the best intentions, right? Walking through and being present, looking forward and being mindful as to the prior identification cycles and systems and what we saw prior, but also fully acknowledging that the patterns that we saw previously might not exist anymore, and that we might be looking at different patterns of identification in the future. So we will be certain to be mindful of that as we move forward, especially back into colors. And as we see next year, that first year where, again, improvement is calculated into the nexus of everything.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. Ed, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yeah, just a quick last comment here. So appreciative to the CPAG members who are raising question, ultimately to capacity and ability of a county office to support districts. So just want to note that. Second, yeah, I am eager to see just the communication plan and the rollout of the changes with the dashboard and from CDE and of course right down through the field. I believe it's just going to be an important piece as we reset back into the dashboard.
Well, Ed, I can let you know that at the end of this presentation, it's going to start with that lovely setting the table for all of that information. So we'll be happy to wrap up today with setting the table for all of the resources that we have at the ready.
Great, thank you.
We'll go Tarina, then Todd, then Babatunde. Go ahead, Tarina.
Hi, I'm sorry, I have one more thing. And Kimberly, thank you again for listening to me. So the chronic absenteeism, and I feel like we are still saying, oh, we're back to normal, and we're not back to normal, and how that would look. I mean, we know that certain communities have, widespread, whether it's COVID, whether it's, who knows what else is coming. How can schools basically record that data as whether it's COVID or something else, and not just chronic absenteeism where the student is just not coming to school, because I'm afraid that might take some part in, the new data that will be coming through. What is that consideration looking like, or is there any, or are we just back to normal when we're not in a normal society right now?
I can comment real quick on chronic absenteeism and just thinking through a lens for 2022. I would like to remind everyone that chronic absenteeism is consists of both excused absences and unexcused absences. So missing school in any way, shape, or form, whether you decided to take an extended vacation multiple times throughout the year, right? Some folks really, like to take their kids out for 3-day weekends all the time, right? Missing school is missing school. And this year we might be, again, the dashboard is to shine, is to identify priority areas, right? And areas of concern. And absence in any way, shape, or form might be one of those areas of great concern for most schools and districts across the state this year. And that's what and if the dashboard shows that, or maybe some more than others. But I think it's really important to notice that chronic absenteeism truly does measure, again, absence is absence. And so knowing how many students are chronically absent is going to start us, just provide additional information as to the challenges that everyone is facing, and additionally help schools and districts get the support they need to get students in the classroom and moving forward, or make up deficits that might be very, very large to make up in prior years.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Todd and then Babatunde. Go ahead, Todd.
Hey, I have a comment more than a question. Do you want me to wait? Oops.
No, you can go ahead. You can go ahead, Todd, because after this conversation, we're going to take a break and then we'll continue on with the presentation. So if it's relevant to this part of what Kimberly's talking about, then you can go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just it's a comment, not a question. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I think this has been a really interesting discussion to me. And I think, while we talk about eligibility for assistance and we call it that, I'd speculate that most districts experience this as a kind of punishment or a burden, even though I'm sure the county offices do everything they can to present it as it's something they're trying to, offer authentic assistance. There's a saying in the private sector, there's no words more feared than I'm from corporate and I'm here to help. So, I think this underscores kind of what we were talking about in the first section about how the risk of the dashboard essentially becoming a 78-item compliance checklist, 78 because it's 13 categories by six indicators, where having a red square gets you in trouble. And while there are some good reasons for this, it does drive a compliance-oriented approach to the dashboard. It basically becomes dashboard whack-a-mole, where the whole name of the game is to flip red squares to orange. And because if you get red, then you're eligible for assistance, and that's not something you want. So I don't have any suggested changes about this, or changes to the proposed criteria, but I just wanted to underscore that this is what I think this is what drives compliance-oriented thinking versus authentic improvement. And I know the way it's delivered, it's aimed more. People are aiming more at authentic improvement, but I think this is a weakness of the dashboard design as it currently stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. And just as being part of a district and a county, and just one snapshot, I know one of the assistance and support that we provided districts in the past few years was principal professional development, because we looked at some of the student groups that the district was struggling with, and it came up to principals really needing support on strategic planning. And so we partnered with the district to provide that PD alongside their district leaders, and they were so happy to have that capacity and support. With another district, we focused on African-American African-American achievement in math with their middle schools. And we brought in coaches and worked alongside the district coaches. So they really had tenfold in capacity. So I appreciate that kind of big perspective on how support can feel limiting, but just wanted to offer those two real life stories of where districts were like, thank God, because we need a little support here in helping identify the areas of focus that we need. But again, just two small anecdotes of work that I've seen where districts and counties are really partnering and the districts are happy. And I'm sure there's other examples throughout the state, but I just know my districts would be upset if I didn't share those two highlights.
Very helpful. Thank you, Melanie.
Mm-hmm. Babatunde, go ahead. And then Diane.
Thank you. So I think, Todd, you brought up some great points there. We have to really be thoughtful about how differentiated assistance is perceived and is implemented. It should be authentically something that is about continuous improvement, not about a compliance checklist, because then you're going backward, right? And there's a lot of things that we've learned as a state, obviously, from the API days, and we're trying to turn that needle. So I think your comment, Todd, about that is, I want to echo that. And then Sheilanine brought up this idea of, in particular, our emergent multilingual students or our English learner students. And obviously, we know that achievement levels with that subgroup is not where we want it to be in our state. However, it's one of the areas that we see the lowest amount of, proportionally the lowest amount of students at the LEA level identified for differentiated assistance. One of the things that I was curious about and would love to hear thoughts about this if possible, I'm not sure if there's time to, or not, but is that when we're looking at the English Learner Progress Indicator, the cut points set are currently, it looks like less than 35% of students making adequate progress for English language proficiency according to the LP is considered very low, and then very high is 65% or more. The reason I bring it up is because that is one of the indicators on our California dashboard that actually measures true growth, meaning we're looking at the same exact student and we're looking at how they did from one assessment from the LPAC to another assessment, right? And then there's the 6 LP levels that a student is supposed to be moving up to make sufficient progress as the state has defined. My thought is, does it make sense to look at those cut points again and to see if maybe we should have higher expectations for our LEAs and charter systems around moving from the growth of our students? So basically right now we're saying, 65% is considered very high. And I'm thinking, well, if we're looking at an individual student, we're looking at their growth from year over year, I think we should shoot for a higher cut point than 65%, considering very high. So it's just some food for thought, something that I'm just curious your thoughts on around that, because I think that could change quite dramatically the number of LEAs that are identified for DA, differentiated assistance, and particularly focusing in on our emergent multilingual students, our English learners.
Thank you, Babatunde. Diane, go ahead.
Hi. I'm being slow to tag in on this because I'm trying to formulate my thoughts appropriately, but I think Todd nailed it for me. In the differentiated assistance is the stated intent is to support and help and improve districts and schools and so on. And I know that is certainly the reason it exists, at least on some level. But in practice, it becomes, does feel punitive. And I'm going to wear my charter hat for a moment and say, especially for charters. Charters can get into serious trouble if they are on differentiated assistance. And so the assistance may be something wonderful coming from, best intents, it may be a wonderful piece of assistance coming from a county, but the very fact that the charter was identified as needing differentiated assistance puts them on a hot track for getting shut down. So the differentiated assistance label does in fact become punitive. And I'm very conscious of that. And I guess I'm in the same boat as Todd saying I'm not really asking a question. I'm just wanting to kind of put it out there and make an observation that this is one of those pieces of accountability that has very different consequences for charter schools than what it does for non-charter schools.
Thank you, Diane. And I know we're not the state board, so we could never, ask for things, but in hearing the conversation, I know we're focused on the differentiated assistance eligibility criteria, but maybe in a future CPAG meeting, if the topics made sense, a little, maybe some highlights on what support has looked like over the past few years across the state to kind of help broaden that discussion. And as Diane said, maybe diverse of charter schools, even though that would be very new for differentiated assistance because they haven't been identified yet. But for CDE staff, if it makes sense, that might be something for a future item around just some highlights of what this support has actually looked like, since today's item is more focused on the criteria. So thank you, CPAG members, for bringing those different pieces out. I'll go to Nancy next. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you so much for that. I think that level 2 support, that differentiated assistance, it can be so unique and I think specified for a school system or a system of schools. I'm curious, and again, this might be for later on, the inputs and the supports that are provided, what are the outcomes and the outputs, like in terms of student results? So I'm wondering just out loud, are there more than likely not, there's going to be repeated tier 2 schools, right? How many schools move out of tier 2 into tier 3 and into tier 1? So going back to that local kind of focus, wow, what really worked here, which I don't want to say moved you out of, but you're now no longer, and what's really working. So I'm just curious and wondering if, we as a state have ever really focused and looked at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. So I know we're due up for a break, so let me just make sure I'm not missing anyone's hands, and we will have more presentation from CDE, so as things click or come to light, we'll still have time with them on this item. Okay, seeing no hands, State Board staff, if you're okay, a 15-minute break, does that sound good?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so we'll come back, everyone, at 11:20. Is that right? Is my brain on track with math? 11:20? I'll give us 16 minutes. All right, we'll come back at 11:20. Thank you, everyone. Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming back together. We will take roll just to make sure that we have a quorum. So, Sarah, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
All right, Melanie, I'll support Sarah this time. She's letting me give me the controls here. So, Melanie Green.
Thank you, William. Present here.
Ed Manansala.
Here.
Jesse Levin.
Here.
Nancy Portillo.
Here.
Ron Anaya.
Here.
Bootsy Battle Holt.
Here.
Diane Grotjohn.
Here.
Serena Small.
Here.
Janelle Woodward.
Here.
Mia Cooper.
Here.
Roddy Boonchoy.
Here.
Shiloneen Cruz Gonzalez.
Here.
Babatunde Ilori.
Here.
Gabriella Tivitan. Amy Nguyen Hernandez. And Todd Collins.
Here.
All right, thank you. All board members are accounted for.
Thank you so much, William. With that, we will continue on. And just to let you all know, Ed will be picking up as your facilitator. So when we pause for questions again, he will be the one facilitating and bringing folks on to ask their questions for this next part of CDE's presentation. So when you're ready, take it away. Teacher assignment data and the 2022 dashboard.
Thank you, Chair Green. Again, this is Cindy Cazanes, the Director of the Analysis, Measurement, and Accountability Reporting Division at the California Department of Education. I just wanted to pick up a piece from the last conversation to close out on. Member Small had asked about including LGBT students as a new student group on the dashboard. And my response was not completely accurate. So I just wanted to actually correct what I said, in that the department does not have the authority to collect that status. We know that many schools and districts may be collecting that, but we do not at the state level have access to that data. We are collecting and reporting on non-binary. And on the gender tab on DataQuest, you can find information about non-binary students. So switching topics, we're going to take the next two topics together and pause after the science piece for the conversation and for the questions. So to get us started, I'm going back to something we released before the July board meeting, the teacher assignment data, and the conversation around how to include this on the dashboard for 2022. So specifically, following the State Board of Education approval of the teacher assignment definitions several years ago in our Every Student Succeeds Act state plan, we have been working at the department with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing to bring these two data sets together. So keep in mind that we do not have a unified system for teacher data and how teachers are credentialed. It is two separate systems that manually have to work together to bring these data sets together. This first set of data was released on DataQuest at the end of June, and we were very proud to have information sent out via our communications team between several joint agencies. So it was between the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, the State Board of Education, and the department. We also were able to update the school accountability report cards because we had asked for inclusion of that in the 2020-2021 template, and so we also made it available at the same time. So just briefly on the DataQuest report and what is included on it, if you have not had a chance to look at the information for 2020-2021, again, these are called the Teacher Assignment Monitoring Outcomes Report, or Teacher AMOs by full-time equivalent. And this is important because that is required to be reported out on under the Every Student Succeeds Act. So in summary, this table that you see on the screen shows the statewide information for total teaching FTEs. Again, this does not represent the total number of teachers, but rather the unique teaching assignments. So there's roughly 274,000, close to 275,000 FTE represented here. And statewide, what that represents is a majority or overwhelming majority of our teachers are in the clear, which means the class or course is taught by a qualified teacher. The other definitions that we're required to use, again, under ESSA, I don't think these are definitions that the board really enjoyed adopting, but they needed to report out on, which is out of field, and that means the teacher has a credential but has not demonstrated subject matter competence in this subject area, or for the associated student population, and then intern and ineffective. So intern, meaning this teacher is still completing their training or other credential requirements, and ineffective, meaning that the teacher's authorized by emergency permit or holds a teaching credential, but that is outside of the area in which they're teaching. And there are a couple other categories. I know Kim's the math person in the room today, but I know this does not equal to 100%. And so I wanted to mention there are a couple other categories that we have added on that relate to some discrepancies in data. And so if you were to take a look at that information on our website, you would find a robust data definitions and also the other fields that will equal up to 100%. So what the question is today is around using this data on the dashboard. And specifically, this is required under state law because now we have data that is available statewide for the first time. And the standard that it would be under is under basics, so priority 1, and specifically basics related to teachers, instructional materials, and facilities. So it's a 3-part priority area, but we only have statewide data on the first part. So again, the 3 components being misassignment of teachers, number 2, the percent of students without access to their own copies of standard aligned instructional materials for use at home and at school, and the third being instances where facilities do not meet the good repair standards. Those number 2 and number 3 are information that we do not have collected at the state level. It is something that is submitted by local educational agencies through their local indicators. So specifically, I mentioned that this is part of one of the 10 priority areas, which is, you can see the reference to the education code there. I talked a little bit before about we have a lot of guardrails around what we do, and so this absolutely is one of those guardrails. In 2019, there was a piece of legislation that updated this education code that had some requirements. And so it asked that the department, when local indicator or statewide data was available, to the extent that we collected it or had access to it, that we would use this data in the dashboard. And so we have processed this data through this data sharing agreement, as mentioned in the last bullet, with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. So just as far as timeline goes for this, The data was released at the end of June. We also did a short presentation to the board on the data set. It's something that they've been extremely interested in. We are convening an ad hoc policy advisory group to look at feedback in addition to your feedback today to provide to the State Board of Education on how we can include this information on the dashboard for informational purposes. And we will continue to keep this as part of our item updates to the State Board of Education. I should mention that the Ad Hoc Policy Advisory Group is made up of individuals and experts from County Offices of Education, from equity groups, especially our advocacy groups that helped create some of these original priority areas. We do have representatives that are members of, that are from our teaching workforce. And so we are well represented with getting specific content subject matter expertise moving forward. When it comes to looking ahead to 2023 and getting that second year of data, which is currently being collected right now from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, we will bring back that ad hoc policy group to advise the department on how to develop what is also required under this piece of ed code, which is developed objective criteria. So that is what is on our to-do list. And what we are specifically looking for this ad hoc group is to review these first sets of data points, making sure that everybody has a common understanding of what they mean. These are one of the most complicated sets of data that my team has worked on. And keep in mind that while we have 6 million students, about 300,000 teachers teaching those 6 million students equates to 1 million or more courses or 1 million or more potential iterations of data points. And so it is extremely complex when it comes to credentialing and appropriate layers of credentials. And so we have gained quite a bit of subject matter expertise in this area, which was required in order to make sure we're using the appropriate business rules to process these data. And so we are looking to determine, again, these next steps for developing objective criteria. So that will be part of the ad hoc group work. And we'll make sure that they are providing input on how we operationalize this and actually use the objective criteria when it is, of course, as I mentioned, only one part of a 3-part local indicator. And then finally, we've already talked about the fact that they're meeting very soon, and will advise us on the production of the dashboard for the current year. So the proposal the department is bringing forth, and again, I will move through this slide and the next slide, and then we'll move into the science piece, and we'll bring those two back together for feedback from you all, is that we add a link to each local educational agency's teacher monitoring assignment reports on DataQuest within Priority Area 1. I should note that if you're not familiar with DataQuest, this is a great time to go to that resource. When you land on an LEA report, you will automatically be able to look at all of the schools for that LEA. So I should say that up front. You can also compare it against the county which they reside in compared to the state results. So everything is really one click away from a user to look at that information. And then I should note that LEAs actually have already adopted their local indicators. And so this information that they adopted prior to the department releasing the statewide data was based on prior year or self-reported data. So it may have looked or may look different than what we may see because we have the most updated data available. So the question that we will come back to is what input and feedback do CPAG members have around the proposal to add a link to each LEA's 2020-2021 Teacher AMO by FTE report on DataQuest within Priority 1 on their 2022 dashboard. All right, so that was a bit of information. Let me transition into the California Science Test and the 2022 dashboard, and then we will open it up for a conversation. So the 2022 California Science Test, or the CAST, and the dashboard has been something that we have heard very strongly from the field is a desire to have present. And we know that this past year and in prior years that educators are still in the process of adjusting to teaching and learning through the next generation science standards. And in fact, there was recently a PPIC special convening around this very topic. And so I think it provided a really good context for where we are at with the implementation of the CAST and such. I should note that the CAST is one of multiple assessments that we use through our California assessment portal or CASP system. And we need to make sure, just as far as some background information, that we have multiple years of test data to look at and evaluate before we can add it to the dashboard as potentially a full indicator or something along those lines, which is why, the priority, or rather the principles that we talked about in the beginning and the weighting of those indicators was, I think, really important to have at the beginning of the conversation as we start to talk about adding things to the dashboard, whether it's as an indicator or for informational purposes. So the proposal that is at hand is to add a link to the CAST results for 2022 for each school in LEA through the 2022 dashboard. We do have some other options. We could provide a general link to the CAST results or a specific link to the school or LEA through our additional reports button, which is, I would say, if you're at a local educational agency, we see a great deal of traffic to those additional reports. They are highly utilized, and the department, you're going to hear in Kimberly's presentation at the very end, I know member Monticello asked about the fact that, how are we communicating about the dashboard? You're going to hear about some specific resources around things like the science test and how we will be highlighting the information will be available on the dashboard through that toolkit. So here's just graphically how you would find information potentially for this inclusion on the dashboard of the CAST results. Clicking on more information at the header of the California School Dashboard homepage. Going to view additional reports. And so that is the second piece of this conversation. So the question for the science piece is, what input and feedback do CPAG members have around the proposal to add a link to 2021-2022 CASP science test results to the 2022 dashboard, and what location do CPAG members prefer? So is it Vice Chair Monticello? I will turn it back to you.
Yes, thank you so much. So looking for input and feedback from CPAG members. If you could raise your hand if you'd like to weigh in. Okay, Babatunde, if you'd like to go, thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. I am always a big proponent of data transparency and just being very transparent with our data, especially as it relates to things like teacher assignments. Now, I guess the part that I was curious about, and I have to dig into the DataQuest site and go through the definitions in more detail. But with this link to the California dashboard, I think it will be important for people to understand. That's why I like that the subject area is there, like the whole idea of what's clear, what's out of field, intern, ineffective, because districts that are building capacity around college and career readiness and around CTE, as everyone knows, it's challenging to bring people with industry experience that are trying to get these certifications for teaching. And I think it'll be important for that to be somehow communicated as well, like that with school systems and particularly high schools that are trying to increase their capacity to serve students in career technical education courses, there's definitely going to be, I would suspect, higher percentages in those subject areas just because of the process for becoming fully credentialed, et cetera. So that's just something to think about. But I think overall it's a good thing to add to data transparency, but just how we communicate it, I think it will be important.
Thank you, Bootsy, and then Amy.
Yes, thank you. In terms of the teacher data, I'm wondering if there are any plans to include data about national board certified teachers. That data is being collected already because of the new national board incentive. And so I think it might be important to also include some data on national board certified teachers and those who are teaching at high priority schools as well.
Thank you, Bootsy. Go ahead, Amy, and then Shilonen and Jesse.
Mine was more a clarifying question. So in terms of putting a link onto priority one for the dashboard, so we're just saying link it to the what is already there at DataQuest. It's not going to become its own dashboard where you have to show progress, improvement, status change. It's just basically here's the information, correct?
So this is step one, and step one is what you've just described. Step two, with 2 years of data, will be establishing objective criteria. And objective criteria in the context of a local indicator is something we've not explored before. And so that's why this ad hoc group is going to be very critical to helping us find a path forward on determining what that means. That is the work ahead. So I think it's probably easier to describe it as a two-step process. This simply getting the data out and putting it on the dashboard, making those results public as the prior member stated, the data transparency is really what we're trying to achieve, at least for this 2022 dashboard.
Thank you.
Shilonen.
Ed, am I next?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Shilonen. Similar to Bootsy's question, I was just curious about whether the bilingual authorization data will be available, as well as what she mentioned with the national board certification. I'm curious about that, and I don't think we got an answer to her question either.
I'm happy to answer both. I took it as a comment as opposed to a question. So we are, again, following those guardrails that we are limited to reporting out on the metrics that the board has defined. And so that information could be coming in a forthcoming report outside of this requirement under the Every Student Succeeds Act. But this first step for the teacher data piece is to get on information that is required under the Every Student Succeeds Act. I should reference that I believe that the National Board Certified Teachers Information data is actually available on the department's website. It's not something that my team maintains, but I do believe that information is out there, as well as the high priority schools information. But I can definitely follow up, and we can make sure that we note that moving forward.
Thank you, Shilonen. Jesse, and then Diane.
Thanks so much. So I'm all for including the link. The one thing, the three words I want to say is documentation, documentation, documentation. That for individuals to use the data appropriately or interpret it appropriately, they're going to need documentation as to all of this. And it sounds like there's not a lot of, I'm not sure if there's control over, there's certainly not control over where the data is from this shop. But certainly on the dashboard side, we could provide something there. And then I think my other question was sort of answered by step two, and that is if it's determined that we want to cut the data in certain ways in order to develop criteria, then we also need to document that very, very clearly and make sure that the data is made available in that fashion. So, I mean, right now we've just been given the statewide kind of the highest level of teachers by clear, out of field, et cetera. But if we wanted to try to cut these data in other ways that might be useful, such as by subject area or cutting it up by different LEAs to see kind of where they stand in terms of this more granular area, like subject area, like how are the math teachers looking,
And
right?
actually, Member Levine, that information is available on DataQuest.
Oh,
and
is
so
it?
Perhaps,
Okay, thank
perhaps you missed the memo. There was a memo. I forgot to mention that at the end of June that was released as in conjunction with the actual data release. And so anything that's on DataQuest will include information at the state, the county, the LEA, and the school level. You can also look at it by subject area. That is what is the homepage for that. You can look at it by charter, non-charter. You can look at it by school type. You can look at it by school groupings. So if you want to look at a K-8 grouping or a K-12 or just high schools, there are a lot of filters available on this data set. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at the data set, I would encourage you to look at DataQuest because, like I said, it's been probably a labor of love for us, but there's a lot of good information out there.
No, thank you for that. And mea culpa, I'm sorry that I haven't dug into that. And just back to my original point, documentation. So, I could learn how to do that. I'm not sure if it's documented how to dig through that.
It actually is. Yeah, no, I think if you look at the DataQuest report, we've actually spent, I would say, more time on the documentation than we ever have on a data release because we know how critical this is. And to your point, how it can potentially be misused or misinterpreted. And so we worked very closely with our colleagues at the California Teachers Association and other statewide groups to make sure we got it right.
Thank you so much, and sorry for spending time on this.
No, not at all. I appreciate the question.
Diane, thank you, Jesse.
Well, first of all, you guys have asked for input on the science assessment question, and all I've got to say is yay. It looks good, and I'm glad to see it coming through. I want to go back to that teacher credentialing question a little bit. And Cindy, I'm hoping you can. I cannot find this anywhere, and I've been looking for it. That whole definition of out of field that came from the feds, as I understand that. Is that correct?
No, the State Board of Education adopted that definition. So it resides in our Every Student Succeeds Act approved state plan.
All right. So my question is a teacher teaching in any independent study or the alternative, those things that are appropriately credentialed under 44865, are those all considered out-of-field teachers in terms of this database?
So, Diane, I think your question is a little in the weeds for the conversation today. Could we take that conversation offline? And I'm happy to walk through.
I would love to. I've just been trying to find a definition of the term that clarifies that, and I haven't been able to find it. So
I can definitely point you to that.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, going to Nancy and then Sheila and Nina. I'm not sure if you're raising your hand again or not, and then we'll go to Amy.
Thank you for the presentation and the opportunity to kind of, play through DataQuest. It is an absolute robust data set of systems, and just even playing with it again now, looking at how you can drop down and see, all of those pieces from content to certified to certificated to not. Something, I guess it's on slide 43, I'm thinking about August 22 and winter 2023, just taking a look, at the local school districts in my area and those that need the most support. It's not surprising to see, right? There are schools with high needs with the most vacancies, even the projected vacancies, in our schools that need the most support. So I wonder in the August bullet and the spring bullet, I see there's feedback on the reporting of the data, elementary, all these things, but am I speaking too soon to ask kind of what's next? There are so many ways that you can see where the supports are needed. The content areas is right now an appropriate time to kind of say, that's great. We're going to get feedback. That's great. We're going to come back in 2023. Is there a little ping into kind of what's next on how we can support, whether it's county offices, the state, our local schools in this area?
Absolutely. And I guess I'm remiss in acknowledging that we have a whole team a whole division actually dedicated to our professional educators, which is our education and excellence an equity division led by Monique McQueen, and they are actually kicking off a series to that effect to technical assistants next week that they've invited us to be a part of. And so if you think about the role of accountability, shining a spotlight, and then our partnering with our subject matter experts, our program area experts, like our professional development team. We have a college career division that helps and really leads the effort around our career and technical education. So the prior conversation about that's where you may find a lot of teachers who may not be in the clear because they may have a credential, but they may not have the exact specification to teach certain types of students, like our English learners or other students. And so, yes, absolutely. This slide that is currently posted is very specific to accountability. But when it comes to how do we help, the role of county offices is critical in this because they are responsible for assignment monitoring. And so that connection between the department, the county offices, and then the connection to our schools and our districts. And we had some really, really great conversations. We had a lot of pre-work that we did prior to this release to touch base with some of our more needier districts to learn about, what the challenges were. And absolutely, the teacher shortage is real, and we heard that. We've heard about the recruitment efforts that districts are undergoing. And so keep in mind this data set is over a year old. And so it'll be really interesting to see the data that's being collected right now in that second year of data and how things may have changed.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Yes.
So I just wanted, so I asked a question last time, so I just wanted to make my comment then to give feedback for the board in terms of bilingual certification. I hope that the board will think about not only that, but what other areas need to be publicly available, especially bilingual certification when we think about the demand for bilingual teachers in the field, right? And I hear many districts want to create dual immersion programs, but they're not able to because they can't get the teachers. So I think I encourage the board to think about and encourage them to include, to expand beyond just what's required. I also think that it's really critical because we think about the Cradle to Career database that will eventually be available publicly, right? And so the more we're thinking now about what data needs to be publicly available so that it can feed into that system, I think is really important. So I just wanted to share that. And then in terms of feedback for the science piece, the science test, I think it's great that it's going to be put on the dashboard. Realistically, I think most people won't even notice that it's there. So I think in terms of how we communicate, especially to decision makers about like where to find it, how to use it, I think that's really important.
All right, thank you. Amy, I believe you had a comment.
Yes. One of the things you had asked for was for the science assessment. The question was, where should we put the report or the link to the information? For us, it would be helpful if it was under the view additional reports, because we do use that. And it would be, I think, quicker to get through than looking at the other way where the top bar. So that was just my comment.
All right, I see no further input or feedback at this time.
Small has her hand raised. Sorry.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
I'm sorry I missed that. My apologies.
I know you can't see it, but it's okay. Anyways, so Jesse, I just want to let you know you're going to have a field day in the data quest. I love it. It's my favorite place to live. It gives you so much stuff, so much information. But I had a question, and maybe this might be offline, but career technical education, and you know specifically about our school, and and I know apprenticeships are in the CCI, so we have people that are experts in the field, and our students participate in apprenticeship programs. However, they don't have CTEs, but they are certified from their unions, or basically their unions. How could we possibly help those instructors, as either with their union or outside of their union, obtain their career CTE credentials. But like I said, I think that might be an offline discussion. Or is that overlooked because they're in an apprenticeship program and we still are able to collect that CCI information?
I agree that it's probably best to have the conversation offline. I'm pretty familiar with SciTech and the uniqueness that of the model that you have because of Ernie Silva and his work over the years. Probably I would refer that to two of my colleagues. It sometimes takes a village here to get responses, and we have experts in the credentialing piece of things, but also on, again, the subject that is being taught. And so I don't think it's unique to SciTech, but I think it's a great question, and I'm happy to follow up with you directly.
And I do agree that additional reports for the science assessment would be a great location.
All right, Cindy, passing it back to you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Kim to close us out. This is the fun part. We get to show off some things that we've been working on, that we've been getting feedback on from the field, and you will get a glimpse of the 2022 dashboard.
Hello again, everyone. So we're going to see if I talk fast enough or not fast enough for you guys to go and enjoy your lunch today. So I am happy to share that the 2022 dashboard update with you to give you a small sense of what's in store for what it looks like this year, as well as the resources and tools that we have been working all spring and summer, honestly, to prepare and get everyone ready back for this restart of accountability, knowing that, again, we're not back to normal. Things, there's a lot of anxiety, right, about what's this going to look like? What's the data going to look like? So we are with the field and trying our best to lend support to everyone from all levels. And so I'm going to walk you through what that looks like today. So I showed this graphic earlier with regards to what the dashboard looks like on an annual basis. And I'm using this, this chart as a display to show you that there is no normal for the dashboard. In 2017, sure, we started out with, the debut of the dashboard, but it didn't have a CCI and it didn't have chronic absenteeism on it. Those were indicators waiting in the wings for 2 years of data prior to us being able to for the state board to be able to adopt them. And then in 2018, our LB went away because we were transitioning to a new English learner proficiency exam. So that went away, and we only had 1 year of data there, so we couldn't use information for the LB. And then we only had status for CCI as well. In 2019, our last, marquee dashboard, prior to COVID happening, we still only had status only for the LB. And so while we had colors for everything else, for all the other state adopted indicators, we were just at status only. We didn't have a dashboard for 2020, and we didn't have one for 2021, except we had local indicators on 2021. And now in 2022, you are going to see status only presented for all of the indicators, with the exception of CCI, as I mentioned previously. And you're going to see local indicators again with that 1 year of MET, but no qualification for met or not met for 2 or more years. So that's why we've indicated for status only there too. So we talk about not being back to normal, but honestly, what is normal in the world of dashboards, right? We're hoping for 2024. I'm hoping. And maybe things will look even more different with new indicators and such and more metrics and other things. But right now, as you can see, things are adjusting. And so as a preview of what you're going to see on this year's dashboard, and you're going to see a different graphic. So we're out with the color dials because there are no colors. But we didn't want to have a dashboard that really just had, no indicator available, right? No data here, or point you to numbers instead of giving you a quick glance, and especially for our parents and new users and teachers and others to quickly gauge what's going on. And so what we've developed through, and had so many partners share in with feedback, is we're presenting our status levels in purple color. So as you can see, there's no differentiation in color between very low, low, medium, high, or very high as cell phone bars. And so we thought this determination really helped kind of just display, again, very low performance and really signal, as when we all look at our cell phone, we're all looking for all of those bars to be filled in. And when it's low, we know there's a problem. And when it's very low, we have no hope for at least our cell phone signal. For very low, we're going to see universally that I think people are going to recognize that that's an instance of we need support there. You need support in order to get to very high. You need help. And so that's what we're hoping to indicate throughout these status levels. Additionally, we have developed through the spring and summer extensive resources to help support LEAs and communities navigate the dashboard. So specifically, that includes a toolkit development. We have a full dashboard page within the CDE's website devoted to a toolkit with flyers, webinars, and talking points. Additionally, we've redesigned our web pages to support LEAs across general, technical, and information in the dashboard. That's been about a year-long effort that just debuted. We're also going to be reinvigorating our outreach efforts through social media, and we also have additional dashboard activities to help support LEAs in schools. So let me walk you through those. Our toolkit just debuted yesterday. So if any of you were able to join us for our AIM meeting, we walked through in detail what some of those resources look like. However, the dashboard toolkit is going to be inclusive of LEA flyers, parent flyers, and general knowledge flyers that are ready, colorful, have pictures and designs to translate all of the questions that we have and we get frequently around the dashboard. So for both general audiences and specific audiences. So today we've talked about a lot of nuances and details. Well, sometimes parents don't need all of those nuances and details. They just need to know, what am I looking for? What signals if we're okay? And what signals if we need support and help? And so we've designed flyers for all of those different audiences. Additionally, it's August right now, and we've debuted this toolkit with all of these flyers. We did that intentionally because what we're looking for is from the field is additional feedback. Okay, you have all these resources, what's missing? What do we need that's special this year? What do I still need to explain and I don't have a tool for? Well, it's August. With the dashboard, debuting later this fall, we have time to help develop those resources for those communities and walk through and create things that might be missing in previous years. And we have never debuted our toolkits and resources this early before. Usually they debut with the dashboard. So we're very proud to be able to release all of this information long before the publication of the dashboard. Additionally, we are going to be holding webinars for each indicator this fall. And our department's going to be hosting these with the intent that they're for general audiences. We're very familiar that, districts have had a lot of turnover. There's a lot of new faces, a lot of people in new roles, and a lot of folks who, are new to this community. They might not have been around and paying attention to the dashboard in 2019 in as much detail as they are now. So we're going to be holding webinars for each of those indicators as really a space intended to bridge some basic information around each indicator, but additionally for us, it's that Q&A time to really help provide some professional development to others and get everyone caught up and provide a safe space for people to ask questions. Maybe they don't want to email, maybe they think, oh, it's silly, I have this question, and they're going to find out it's not silly at all, and that we get that question asked all the time. So we'll be holding those later this fall, so stay tuned. And then finally, prior to the release of the dashboard, we will be developing talking points for the dashboard results so that districts and schools have a quick way to reference what they're seeing on the dashboard, both within their communities and across the state. This is something that people have really asked for in the past, and especially with the busy school year. And, the dashboard results are coming out right before holiday season, There's a lot of things happening and moving at districts and schools. So we're going to try and assist the field with providing this new resource with talking points to help them know when the dashboard fully releases, what to share and how to say it with their communities and without them having to do a deep dive on their own. and dig through the dashboard and go through Excel files and everything else to walk through. And then also, we are going to be sharing a lot of resources, but in a more informal sense, through our Twitter account at CDE Dashboard. So if you aren't following us already, please, I'm going to put a little shout out there. We'll follow you back. And also, we have multiple CDE listservs. Those listservs are usually, isolated to active LEA school participants. So we wanted to provide an opportunity to really share some of these resources as they publish, and honestly have a little bit more informal way to share what's going on with the accountability system through that Twitter account. So stay tuned there. We will be sure to be highlighting our flyers as they debut and walk through things there. Now, our accountability website design, I feel like I need Cindy here because, she really spearheaded this effort early last year, and it's come to fruition in a wonderful way because we've heard how people use our system and what they need, and we've responded by creating an extensive redesign of all of our school dashboard and system of support web pages. And the result of that is that we have distinct pages and links for each and every dashboard indicator. And each of those indicators, you can see quickly what resources you have available, the flyers that apply to each of those indicators, the technical documents that have been released over the years. In addition, one of the best ones is there's a coming soon. So if you're looking at, say, the CCI page, and you're wondering, well, what's happening with the CCI? There's a section for that, and it walks through. And we will update these pages frequently in order to provide the most up-to-date resources, state board meetings, memos, etc., to provide a real quick resource for you to be able to do this. Previously, we just had kind of a page for parent resources, and you would have to search through the parent resource page. We had LEA district resources. You would search through there. Some of the flyers would be the same. Maybe some of them were completely different. But essentially, you were kind of selecting on who you were and getting routed to a certain place. We're taking that away, and we're just providing it around the content. So we hope you like it, and it's as usable to you as it is, as we think it is, and the immediate reception that we've had so far to go through. Additionally, the final thing is that it really provides direct links across the CDE website. And as Cindy mentioned, it does take a village here to go through and capture our little slice of accountability. While it does touch on many things, right? We want to be able to have our other divisions at CDE be able to link to that. And this redesign really assists us and will assist users in being able to quickly navigate and cross-link across divisions to be able to access all of that information in a much quicker way. Additionally, this year we are going to be truly out there and supporting LEAs in schools and parents and families by doing a lot of conference presentations. So I think I heard earlier today someone talking about teachers and accessing this data. We are presenting at conferences where there will only be teachers in attendance, talking through the dashboard, asking them questions, and reaching out to them specifically, in addition to multiple other audiences, and really getting out to present to different audiences and different venues to share what the dashboard is, to share that accountability is back, and for them also to share resources so that they can access all this information. So that's the most important part of everything. Additionally, we do plan to have preview support for LEAs as we have for the past 3 dashboards. So LEAs typically have access to a private preview of their data prior to the dashboard release. So this usually happens in a rolling fashion with various indicators. So any LEA that has an accountability coordinator signed up will have access to those private previews and will be able to go and validate and check, hey, that is what my graduation rate looks like when I download my information from CalPads that I've submitted. It looks the same here and here. Or, oh goodness, it doesn't, and that's what that private preview is really for, to help everyone out and also to get a sense of what's happening and what's going on within all of their schools as well for those indicators that we have a lot of calculation value on our end. And then finally, we have debuted a new email address. And it might seem small, but we're hoping it's a big change. Previously, our email address was aau@cde.ca.gov, and it still works. So in case anybody does still have that, you can still reach us there. It will forward to our new email address, dashboard@cde.ca.gov. And we really hope that you can pass this along and share as a resource. We are always there. Our inbox is always full. And we're ready to really handle any and all of those questions going through, especially prior to this release. We can share resources with you. We can answer detailed questions and intricate questions as well. So that is what we have in store for everyone today. So with that, I think we're ready for public comment. Or if there's any questions, I want to check and see.
All right, I see no questions at this time. I'm sorry, Trina, my apologies. Go ahead, Trina.
It's okay. I just want to let you know I did go through the flyers, just going back and forth on the dashboard, looking at that. It was jumpy a little bit. You still had to read, because it didn't take you directly to those. It just took you to the page where all the flyers were. So that might be, because it's for flyers for parents, flyers for, educators. But I think it looks good. I hope they don't have a hard time navigating because it just all comes to one page, which I like. But I appreciate it, and thank you for all your hard work. Thanks.
Thank you, Tarina. Bootsy.
Hi, yeah, thank you for that. It is exciting to see what's coming up next, and appreciate it. I just have a quick clarifying question about the cell phone bar graphic. What are the plans to use a graphic for suspension rate and absenteeism, where very high is no longer very good?
So
I love how quick this is, but if there's some other adjustment, that'd be great.
So we are flipping the switch on the label on the bottom. So very high will be with one bar.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
All right. Just scanning. I don't see any other questions at this point. So thank you for the presentation. We are going to move to public comment. We will now open the phone lines for the public comment queue, and members of the public wishing to provide comment on this item may do so by calling the number on the slide. You'll be notified when it's your time to speak. We encourage you to please state your name and affiliation for the record. Please remember to turn down the speaker volume of your computers if you're following the live feed. Speakers will be limited to 1 minute each.
We'll go ahead and start with caller with phone number ending in 6075. You've been unmuted. Your time starts now. Again, caller with phone number ending in 6075. You've been unmuted. Your time starts now. Okay, we'll go to the next number. Phone number ending in 4369. You've been unmuted. Your time starts now. Once again, phone number ending in 4369. You've been unmuted. Your time starts now.
This is Sally Fox. Do you hear me now?
Yes. We can hear you.
Okay. We applaud the work. I represent the California Association for Bilingual Education, and I'd like to say that we applaud the work of CDE and staff on this issue. Since the inception of the equity-focused local control funding formula a decade ago, CABE and Californians Together have been engaged in efforts to ensure that the accountability system fulfill the promise of equity, parity, and continuous improvement for English learners. With the intent to make the system better, there remain issues yet to be resolved, including setting ambitious LP goals and ending the obscuring of the actual academic needs of both EL only and reclassified fluent English proficient students. Our failure to do so results in a lack of urgency to meet EL's needs in the LCAPs, leading to failure to set growth targets and therefore close gaps, and failure to provide supports to districts to optimize their effectiveness in increasing EL's growth and achievement through the system of support. We stand ready to assist in working with CDE staff on this critical issue.
That's time. Thank you. All right, next we have a phone number ending in 5057. You've been unmuted and your time starts now. Okay, once again, phone number ending in...
Good morning, or good afternoon, rather. Members of the State Board of Education and other colleagues on the call. My name is Eric Alvarez, Policy Associate with Californians Together. Along with other recommendations that my colleagues will mention, I would like to highlight the recommendation to revise the cut scores for LP with a new measure other than the bell curve. We asked the board to revise scores for the LP with a new measure that is based on what an equity-focused system should be producing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the phone number ending in 8878. You've been unmuted and your time starts now.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucero Chavez with the Parent Institute for Quality Education, or PIQUE. We're part of the LCSS Equity Coalition, and we're in partnership with Californians Together. PIQUE is a family engagement and education nonprofit serving more than 18,000 families annually across California, including English learners. Today, we want to emphasize the importance of disaggregating English learners and reclassified English learners in the academic indicator. Aggregating scores masks real outcomes and gives the impression that students are doing better than they are. We want to highlight slide 33 for this. At PIQUE, our mission is to empower families with the knowledge and skills to actively participate in their child's education, and our parents are ready to support their students, but they need accurate data to do so. As an RFEP myself, I know that students need to change as they become proficient, and tracking can really help us better understand their journey to proficiency. We ask that you take note on the importance of differentiating English learning populations as you make decisions and create systems to best support our students.
That is time. Thank you. Next, we have caller with the phone number ending in 5116. Your time starts now.
Good afternoon, members of the California Practitioners Advisory Group. My name is Jessica Sacco, calling in on behalf of Children Now. I'd like to thank the advisory group members as well as department staff for the very comprehensive and robust conversation today. I align my comments with those previous speakers in regards to the needs to reflect upon the LP and English learner group. I would also like to call out and support the CPAG members who expressed concerns around the weighting of the indicators. I would also like to request that, with regards to the science assessment, that the department consider actually including both links under more information as well as additional reports. And finally,
she dropped off. Next, we have phone number ending in 5152. You've been unmuted. Your time starts now.
Hello, my name is Dr. Daron Marcus. I'm the CTE and STEM coordinator of the San Mateo County Office of Education, and I'm also a member of the Board of Directors for the California Science Educators. Recent PPIC research has revealed that science and engineering education is not being appropriately prioritized by all California school districts. This unfortunate revelation comes at a time when our global and statewide crises are deepening and whose solutions stem from innovations in science and engineering. It's incumbent upon us to help provide the workforce with a robust support system, which in our case is the development of a generation who's determined to become part of the solution. What we require are enlightened educational leaders who believe in science and engineering education and who'll step up and let everyone know that we not only understand the issues that we face, but that we'll take action to prioritize it. The inclusion of CAS score data on the dashboard this year and elevating its status to that of ELA and math is not the only solution that we require to fulfill our moral and ethical mandates, but your support is a significant step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with phone number ending in 0493, you've been unmuted. Your time starts now.
Yes, CPAG members, I'm Shelley Spiegel-Coleman with Californians Together. Districts are guided by the data from the dashboard to determine which student populations to address in their LCAP. We request a review of the definition of the EL population, which aggregates 1 year of EL scores, EL-only scores, with RFIP scores. Our 3 LCAP reports and the 4th to be available in September document that very few districts include goals, metrics, and growth targets for ELs, which is a result of masking their performance on the dashboard. Differentiated assistance data from the Kern Geo region covering Kern, LA, Fresno, Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo counties, which enroll 34% of the state's ELs, is a concern. Only one school district is designated for DA in that whole area for English learners, an underrepresentation of districts needing support. We urge you to recommend to the board and the department to disaggregate.
Your time is up. Thank you. Caller with phone number ending in 8945, you've been unmuted. Your time starts now.
Hi, members of CPAG. This is Suzanne Cooey from the Charter Schools Development Center. Principle 4 is on point. The dashboard principles. Principle 4 is on point. Values high performance and growth equally. Since the dashboard currently only provides growth data on LP, presumably this calls for a rapid pivot to focus on supplying growth data for ELA and math. Principle 3 seems off, promotes equity through student group opportunities and performance. I'm not sure what this would mean for the dashboard, but we believe that the dashboard can best promote equity by providing meaningful information on performance and growth. Growth is how you achieve equity. Growth is how you close the gap. Growth is what matters most. The dashboard's stated purpose is to provide meaningful data about progress. I take CPAG members' comments to mean that meaningful data supports continuous improvement and that progress should include growth, especially where small student groups with lots of turnover makes change.
Next, we have caller with the phone number ending in 0394. You've been unmuted and your time starts now.
Good afternoon, members of the California Practitioners Advisory Group. This is Manuel Buenrostro with Californians Together, and I want to briefly address the issues that we have highlighted with the English Language Progress Indicator. As we look at the cut scores, we think that they're not rigorous enough and they really set low expectations for English learner progress. Last time we looked at the data that was released for the LP, less than half of English learners met the growth targets. And as we expect districts to continue to highlight and make progress for English learners, we think that this is critical, that these targets are set with an equity focus and they're set on the expectations that we hope the system to produce, not based on the outcomes that it has produced in the past. The other thing that
is time.
Highlighted. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comment for this section. I'm going to pass it over to Ed.
All right. So given there's no other public comment, we will now open for CPAG member discussion. CPAG members, remember to please raise your hand in the participant panel of Zoom. If you have a question or comment, we will keep track of the hands as best as I can. All right, scanning I do not see any other hands. Okay, so we are going to move. That concludes item 1. Thank you. We will now take up agenda item 3, general public comment. Public comment is invited on any matter not included on the printed agenda. We will now open the phone line for the public comment queue. Members of the public wishing to provide comment on this item may do so by calling the number on the slide. You will be notified when it is your time to speak. We encourage you to please state your name and affiliation for the record. Please remember to turn down the volume on your computers if you're following the live feed. Speakers will be limited to 1 minute each. I'm going to pass it to our facilitator for public comment.
All right. Caller with phone number ending in 4369. You've been unmuted and your time starts now.
I'm sorry, I've already spoken. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
All right. Well, that concludes the August 2022 meeting of the California Practitioners Advisory Group. Just want to say thank you to all of our members and of course to CDE and the staff for presenting, as was already acknowledged, a robust presentation as well as discussion. So appreciate all of you. And our next meeting is October 17th. And thank you for a great meeting. I adjourn today's meeting at 12:25 p.m. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.